Thank you for joining us this morning for our Paycheck Protection Program, another working capital workshop. My name is Eduardo Pineda, and I will be your moderator for today's session of the 2020 Entrepreneur Summit. This is our 9th annual e-summit, and it's our very first year bringing the event online. So we're incredibly excited, and we hope that you are too. In a few minutes, you'll hear from our workshop sponsor and panelists. In addition to providing a variety of services to the community, HUF is also deeply involved in civic engagement. There are two important ways for you to get involved in the community this year: by responding to the census and by voting. So we encourage you to do both. Now, small business owners in Broward, you can help our county get counted in the 2020 census by taking 15 minutes to have your employees fill out the census. For more information and material, please contact Otto Valenzuela. We will share his contact information soon. Also, the upcoming general election is taking place on Tuesday, November 3rd, and the deadline to register to vote is on October 5th. So again, we encourage you to visit becomeavoter.org and register to make sure your voice and your vote is heard. Now, we'll go over a few housekeeping rules. You'll be able to ask questions through the Q&A feature on your Zoom panel. We'll select questions to be addressed live by our guest, or we will type a response for all other attendees to see. If we type a response, your questions and the responses will appear to others as well. This webinar is being recorded, so within 24 hours, you will receive a link to this recording as well as to our event survey. Please complete the survey for this webinar to share your experiences and to help us improve. Lastly, we ask you to please mute your device when you're not speaking and to please silence your phones. Now, I'd like to turn it over to our workshop sponsor with Amaranth, Eduardo Bello. Oh, I'm sorry, Eduardo, I believe you're in mute.
Yes, perfect. Good morning and welcome to HUF's 9th Entrepreneur Summit. My name is Eduardo Bello. I'm here on behalf of Amaranth. We are honored to have you all here today, and we're honored to sponsor this workshop, Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, and other working capital. For 40 years, Amaranth has developed strong relationships with people and communities of all kinds, and we are eager to create new ones. Flexible and dynamic, we adapt to your specific needs. That's because we can anticipate your financial requirements based on what you are and where you are in your life and where you plan to go. We are proud to offer you a diverse portfolio of financial situations to meet your evolving preferences and priorities. And we're always looking for new ways to help you. Amaranth believes everyone's journey and goals are different. And our commitment is to support you along the way. Learn more about Amaranth at www.amaranthbank.com. The goal for today's session is to ensure you get informed, connected, but above all, inspired. Our panelists today are Yvonne Bucognani. She is Vice President and SBA Team Leader with Amaranth, and Fabiana Estrada. She is Director of Lending for Southeast Region of Acción East. Yvonne and Fabiana, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Eduardo, for introducing our panelists. Welcome, Fabiana and Yvonne. Now we'll jump right into our discussion. For the first question for the day, we have the following. The Paycheck Protection Program closed earlier this month. And if I didn't have a chance to apply or my application wasn't approved, what are the other alternatives that I have?
Fabi, do you mind if I start first?
You first, please.
Okay. So right now, unfortunately, the PPP program, like Eduardo said, is not active right now. But the EIDL loan with the SBA, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, is still active and available for borrowers to apply for it, people that are in need. They're still actively taking applications. Just make sure you have all your information handy and you properly fill out the applications, because a lot of them are being denied due to unverifiable information. But also be patient, because I think that the SBA may release a PPP program once again after Congress goes into session. There looks to possibly give people an increase of those that already have a PPP, for those that may have suffered an economic injury from the same time period last year. None of that has been approved yet, but just be patient. There's also other programs that Fabi will explain to you that are available through the county that are very helpful for small businesses. Fabi, maybe you could talk about the RISE program.
Yes, absolutely. There is a program that is locally applied in Miami. It's not for people that they are located in Broward, that they could provide with these funds that is called RISE Miami-Dade. They could provide up to 6 months of your commercial lease agreement, your monthly payment, or if you're working from home, it will be multiplied times 6. And it's a nice program where the interest rate is 3.25, really very low, it's prime. There's other programs that they have 3.74, like for example, the IDOL. And also the most important part of this program is that you don't have to make any payments for the first 3 months of the life of the loan. You have to have credit. That is something that the IDOL and all the programs are going to request, a minimum credit score of 570. And like Yvonne mentioned, the paperwork, the documentation is key. At any level, at any program that you are going to participate and you are going to apply, our best advice, if this is something that we could give you, is a good advice, keep your records up to date, try to revise your credit, and those are going to be the 2 elements, most important elements for you to be able to qualify for any program. In this case, very important that you have all the information compiled, ready to be sent, and to avoid any delay like Yvonne mentioned.
Thank you so much. Thank you. As a reminder to our participants, if you have any questions for our panelists today, please send them via the question and answer feature on your Zoom panel. So now let's move on to the next discussion point. Yvonne and Fabiana, if I successfully receive a PPP loan, what are the key things I must do to ensure that my loan is forgivable?
That's a very good question, Eduardo. And this is something that we're going through right now. The key thing is to have all your paperwork ready. So the main thing that the PPP loan was for is to provide payroll support. So as long as you use 60% of the proceeds of your loan for payroll, your loan will be forgiven. But you need to supply either a payroll report, copies of your 940s, proof that you paid that payroll to your clients. The payroll is inclusive of your healthcare benefits, of taxes, of any retirement accounts. That's all part of payroll. Key thing is to make sure you document everything. You have all the paperwork readily available to the bank. You have to make sure you fill out the application correctly. There's 2 applications, which is a 350 easy and the regular 350. The easy form is for those companies that did not have any reduction in salaries, that did not have any reduction in their full-time employees. If you have reduction in both, you have to use the other form, the other 3508 form, okay? The other key factor is that you have to have all your other non-payroll cost documents available, which is your utility payments, your rent payments, and your interest payments. You have to have all that documentation readily available to provide to the bank. Copies of canceled checks. Let's say you want me to declare your FPL statements. I need a copy of your FPL bill with that canceled check. Your rent, I need a copy of your rental agreement along with those canceled checks. Just like your interest payments on your mortgage, we will need to see an amortization schedule provided by your bank to see what was that monthly interest payment allocated for your loan. The key is just have everything documented and available for the bank to review.
Like Yvonne said, and this is very important having Yvonne here today because of her experience with SBA, she is the master here. So I'm really very glad to be having Yvonne to provide this key information. You know why? Because most of the time, our clients are really very confused. The small business owner, the community are confused. Like Yvonne mentioned, there are two types of application. One is the easy, only 2 pages, so it will be simple. But the other one has 11 pages. So it will be good, like Yvonne mentioned, to be ready, get the documentation. And also remember that if you have any issues, you should be talking with your lender, with your bank. But if the bank is not ready, they are busy, remember that we have the score, the SBDC, that they could be helping you out during the process, because it's absolutely impossible with a large number of applications that your bank is going to be seeing in detail every documentation that you have. So you have to be ready, but if you need assistance, remember that there are out there like the Hispanic Unity, other community organizations that they could provide you some kind of assistance free of charge and giving you some guidance. Remember that the entrepreneur is the one that should be doing all the due diligence. I'm not going to go to your house to keep, to look for the mortgage statement. You have to have that ready. The same for the credit. You will be the one trying to keep the information up to date with the credit if you are applying for the IDOL or any other program. So remember that you have resources, but the main actor here is the entrepreneur.
Correct. And to add on to Fabi, for example, if you use a payroll service company like ADP, most of those companies have made their platform available for this type of loan, for the CARES Act. I have a customer that just went into their ADP, picked CARES Act out of their drop-down menu and put their covered period, and they received the report with all the information that we need. And the SBA is accepting that payroll report. Because if you see the instructions that they posted on their website, it says either a payroll report from a payroll company or your backup information, which is your 940, your copies of your checks to your employees, all that. So the key is just to have everything ready. Most banks are going to start accepting applications very soon. The SBA did open up for this August 10th, but some banks are still not ready because banks are trying to develop their own platform to facilitate the process for the lenders in doing the forgiveness. So some banks are still getting ready, but be patient. Your loan is still on deferment. You're not required to make any payments on your loan as long as you apply within 10 months of your covered period. And then even after you apply for forgiveness, the bank still has 60 days to review your request. Then the SBA has 90 days to approve your request. So during that time period, you're not required to make any payments on your loan. So just be patient. You're fine. Okay?
Thank you so much. Well, we'll take a pause now to take a few questions from our attendees. Again, I remind you to please use the Q&A feature on your device to type the questions. We have a question already from our audience. So the question is the following: how can I apply for the economic injury disaster loan? And what are the minimum and maximum loan amounts?
Okay, in order to apply for the SBA disaster loan, you need to go to the SBA website. It's directly done with the SBA. Go to sbadisaster.gov. You fill out the application there. The loan term is a 30-year loan term. The rate is 3.75. You are deferred payments for 1 year of your loan. You do have to have credit. Not great credit, but you have to have credit. You have to have ability to repay your loan. So in other words, if your company has been declaring losses for the past 3 years, don't bother applying because you're not going to get a loan because you have no way to repay the loan. Okay? If the loan is greater than $25,000, they may ask you for collateral. They're going to ask you for a personal guarantee. Okay? It is a favorable loan because they are giving you a 30-year term, but we want to make sure you can pay it back.
Yes, that's key. Everything that Yvonne mentioned is what we had been seeing with people that had been declined. They were declined because low credit score, the ones that they are having 411, 505, and some delinquency. Also keep in mind, because like Yvonne mentioned, if you were in the past defaulting or not making payment on federal government loans that they have certain guarantee, like the FHA, if you were a homeowner and you went into foreclosure, or maybe with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the ones that they were giving guarantee for real estate in primary residence, or if you are not paying your student loan, that's a red flag. Probably makes sense not to waste your time to apply because you are still in default of this type of loan, that they have the guarantee for the federal government. So credit, cash flow is key, time in business as well. So if you are a startup, probably you will be having less opportunity to get the idle. If you started the business 3 months ago, unfortunately, we have the situation where businesses that they were having some kind of activity in February, they are not going to be covered. If you are not a legal resident, in reference of if you don't have the green card holder, or if you are not an American citizen, remember, all the CARES money is going to be applied only for US citizen and green card holders. So if you have a visa, probably that's the reason that you are declined. So always try to be in connection with your lawyer and with your accountant and with your bank, obviously, but in this type of things, try to see if this is a best way to request assistance.
Correct. Even if you have delinquent federal taxes.
True.
There's another
Absolutely.
reason for denial. So you have to be up to date on your taxes. But again, to apply for that loan, just go to sbadisaster.gov and the applications are there, or you can just do a Google search and add idle, and it will take you to the SBA website, and you apply directly with the SBA. It's not done through a bank.
Thank you so much. Yvonne, can you repeat the part about when loan payments are suspended for PPP?
What do you mean suspended? For PPP, you mean when they're on deferment?
Yes.
Not suspended. So initially, when you get your PPP loan, you're not required to make any interest payments in the beginning. And when the first program came out, they said it was going to be for 6 months. Then later on, an interim final rule came out where they extended the deferment period for a lot longer. So as long as you apply within 10 months of the end of your covered period, you're not required to make any interest payments. But then, let's say you did apply within the 10 months of your covered period, you still don't make any interest payments until the SBA renders a decision to the bank whether your loan has been approved or not for forgiveness. If your loan has been approved for full forgiveness, you're not required to make any payments. If you get partial forgiveness, the SBA will pay up to the forgiven amount, and then you'll be required to immediately start making your principal and interest payments on that loan for the remainder of the term. So people that applied for this loan before June 5th, your loan term is 2 years. For those that applied after June 5th, your loan term is 5 years. And again, key, for those that applied before June 5th, you are eligible to extend your loan to 5 years, subject to the bank approving your request. It's not a mandatory extension of the 5 years. The SBA is allowing it, but up to the bank's discretion. So let's say your loan is not fully forgiven and 18 months have passed. You only have very little time to pay off your loan. And if you have a big payment, I would ask your bank to extend your loan for 5 years. Another thing to keep in mind, loan forgiveness. If you have an idle loan while you have the PPP loan and you received the idle advance, which was an advance that they were giving, a grant between $1,000 to $10,000, that advance is going to be deducted from your forgiveness. So let's say you got a PPP loan for $10,000, okay? And you received an idle advance for $1,000, you will only be forgiven $9,000 and you'll be required to pay back that $1,000 to the bank. That's key because a lot of people thought that that grant that the idle loan was giving is free money. It's not free money because in the end you do have to pay it back one way or another, okay? So keep that in mind because a lot of people, I think out there will not be 100% fully forgiven on none of their PPP loans because a lot of people did get the idle advance.
Wow, okay, that's really important to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another question from our audience is, are there similar loans for newer businesses or businesses that were established after January?
That was the topic that I was covering. Unfortunately, and this is the reality, it's very complicated to get some kind of assistance. We understand and we feel the pain for this entrepreneur that they were making a financial commitment to open a business maybe from 5,000 up to 100. We had been seeing a lot of these entrepreneurs, but unfortunately, there's no assistance because of the fact that they are a startup and we don't know how the business was going to It's really very complicated. That's the reality for a startup. But anyway, I suggest to them if they could apply for grants, that maybe this is something that they are still available. There is a website that is called helloalice.com. That is an engine that you could look for grants, and probably there is something that it could be available for this startup. But I know our people that they are really very committed with business. So we have the hope as well, because most of the banks are working with us, with CDFI organization like Acción, that we are trying to put out there some programs in order to be a financial support during this hard time. Right now, I don't see any type of solution. But anyway, I know that we are working, and the banks are working as well, trying to give a hand for these people that they were left behind from the system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, thank you. Now we have following questions from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
If my company got the EIDL, $1,000 per employee, and also received the PPP, is it possible to get the 100% of the PPP forgiven?
No. Unfortunately, whatever you received as an idle advance will be deducted from your forgiveness proceeds. So you received an advance of $10,000 and you got an idle loan of $100,000, you're only going to be forgiven $90,000. You have to pay back that $10,000. Okay, and all this information that I'm saying, I'm looking at the chat and some people are asking this information. You can go to the SBA website or the Department of Treasury website related to the PPP loan, and there's FAQs that came out regarding the loan forgiveness process. All of that is detailed in there. Okay, I could give you the link later to Hispanic Unity so they can send out to the members so they can have access to those links. But they're very detailed, frequently asked questions where they'll ask any typical question that a business owner would ask, and they will provide the answer to you. Okay, or I will call your lender to get an answer.
Yeah, you know what, it will be good, and this is the reason why the beauty of this type of, meetings that we have virtually with Hispanic Unity in this case, because we are trying to put the information in black and white. Most of the time they are saying, hey, try to apply here, there, get money here and there, and that it could be a really very big mistake, because like some people, they are realizing right now that it's not free money, the advance. The same happened when the Florida put out there the bridge loan. That is a loan that you had to pay it back. So it's always good to have an ally with community organization that they could explain the process and why it's important to take this advance, or maybe it's not important to take this because there are other resources out there. And also, let's say that you have to pay the money back. The interest rate is 1%. Correct me, Yvonne, if I'm wrong. So it's not a dramatic interest rate that you will be, not having enough money. But anyway, again, try to be prepared. Yvonne mentioned something important as well. Extend the term if you need more time just to repay the loan. Be very sure to have a conversation with your lender. What are the conditions? Mm-hmm. What are the documentation? So be prepared. That's the key for this type of program and for you guys to succeed getting the forgivable aspect of the ideal, the PPP, I'm sorry.
Yeah, not only that, you have to do your forgiveness timely. If you've already used your funds and you're already past your covered period, apply for forgiveness. Because the longer you take, the shorter your loan term will be. And let me tell you, banks may not want to extend that time period to 5 years because it's costly for the bank to maintain that loan in their books. And I'm being completely honest. So banks may want you to pay off the loan within the 2 years. So as soon as you're done, apply for forgiveness. Don't wait.
Thank you. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to the audience for your questions. Let's move on now to our next discussion point. So Yvonne and Fabiana, is there any connection between the PPP and the SBA debt relief program? And does the SBA debt relief program apply to the state economy injury disaster loans?
Okay, there is no relation. Okay, the SBA debt relief program is only for those existing SBA loans that have been in the books before September of this year. So if you have an existing SBA loan or are in the process of applying for an SBA loan, a 7(a) or a 504, before September, SBA will make 6 months of your loan payments. That is what the debt relief is. Those are for existing SBA loans. So let's say you got a loan in February, or you had a loan 5 years ago and you're still paying for the loan, 6 months of those payments will be paid by the SBA. That's what the debt relief program is. There's nothing to do with PPP or the EIDL loan.
Absolutely, and it's going to end probably soon. So the
Correct.
payments will resume again. So it's something that you have, we are always talking about the SBA. The SBA, we know that they do not do lending directly, unless we have in this type of situation that they are emergency, like, you know, Irma, and when we had some type of situation like we have right now with the COVID. But the lenders, Amerant, they are the ones that they are providing the SBA money, the guarantee. So try to be sure that you understand the process. That's key for your loan, for your business, for your repayment.
Thank you again. And as a reminder, if you have any questions to our panelists, please send them via the Q&A feature. Okay, so moving along, next question would be, as a business owner, how do I ensure I have a full relationship with a financial institution, and what things should I consider?
Yeah, what is important to understand is what type of service my business will need. So if I have a business that is operating locally, probably will be good to have a bank account with someone that has this type of service, my checking, my saving account, my business account, that everything could be in one place. That is absolutely important for you as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. Why? Because, for example, us as a CDFI, we are always seeing people that they have one account here and there, and this is very complicated because there are transfer or there are some money that is coming in, coming out, and it's always important, and this is something that we all we are witness during this pandemic, that you have to have a relation. What happened with the PPP? If you were not having the business bank account, probably your bank was not going, even the fact that they were willing to help you out to do the PPP, but you don't have the business bank account already set up. And we see people that they are really very informal, and it's a learning experience. We need to be formalized, having my personal account, having my business account with my bank. I prefer, honestly, because we had been doing this for the last 12 years, trying to provide the financial education with entrepreneurs. Know your lender, know the service that they provide. If you need a business card, if you need the merchant, if you need the checking, the saving account, try to have the conversation with your lender. That's important for avoiding in the future the frustration that we had been seeing in a small business owner during this time of the PPP assistance.
I agree with Fabi. As a lender, we want to have a relationship with the customer. We don't want to have a transaction with a customer. If you have a relationship with a customer, the lender or the bank will see you in a different way. They will see your commitment to the bank, and we will share that same commitment to you as you share with us. We want to see your home loan. We want to see your home equity line. We want to see your wealth management account. We want to service you as a whole, because we'll better service you when we see you as a whole. We see you in part. We really don't know how much of a need we can provide to you. So if you come out of a relationship, look what happened with other banks, just like Fabi was mentioning. If you didn't have a credit card and a checking account with, I think it was Bank of America, they weren't giving you the PPP loan. Wells Fargo, unfortunately, had the same situation. If you didn't have a bank account with them, they weren't giving the loan. So it's important to have a relationship with a bank, complete relationship.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, the following question is, how are businesses you work with adjusting their financial projections during this time of uncertainty? And what tips do you have for managing personal and business credit and deposit accounts?
My suggestion is make sure you have everything documented. Try not to get overdrawn. Don't live within your means. Check your accounts daily. Be careful that you're paying your bills on time, because right now credit is key. And cash flow is key. It really is. Use the loans for the purpose that they were intended. Don't use the idle loan or the PPP loan to start a new business. Don't use it to buy a car. Don't use it to pay off high debt, because that's not what the purpose of those loans are. And that's where you can get in trouble right now. Just be mindful of everything you're doing. Keep good records. Bobby, anything you can add?
Yeah, what is important to mention is that always the personal guarantee is key. And remind our entrepreneurs that if you are checking your credit and you have those tools that you could go, for example, let's say Credit Karma, that is a good resource, is free of charge. They will be trying to sell all kind of service, so try to avoid that. But anyway, you will have your score there. You will know in what situation are you right now in order to apply for your business loan, for your home line of credit, or maybe a commercial loan. You will know what is information that the creditors out there are saying about yourself. How are you paying? You could fix some information that probably is wrong. But remember, it's not only credit, like Yvonne mentioned, cash flow. I could have a perfect credit, but maybe I don't have the cash flow to prove that I could repay a loan, because probably I am to here with my credit card. So maybe it's not a good moment to take an additional debt. So I'm always putting the same simple example. When we have a party, a wedding, we are trying to get ready, getting fit, we do exercise, trying to be sure that that dress fit perfectly well with us, or maybe if we have a marathon, we are getting ready. We prepare. The same with everything that we are doing with loans. And credit, unfortunately, the personal guarantee, it will be there for a while. Don't think that you will be building credit or business credit only, and nobody will be checking your partner credit or your credit. Because sometimes, you know, the issue that we are seeing is that my credit is perfect, but my partner has a disaster. So we need to be very sure when we work with partners or with another person in my corporation, in my LLC, that we are in the same boat, we are in the same type of business together, we have the same credit, we have the same credit experience, because those are the factors that they are going to be analyzed and specifically in the future. Because like you said, projections, how we are going to base a loan on projection when we have our economy opening one day, closing, we have the social distance. So we have to understand the lender as well. So it's common sense. We cannot pretend to have an amazing projection and then we know that the economy is giving us another type of, you know, timing. Not everything will be as we projected on a paperwork. So that's a reason we need to be very careful as well.
Another thing is keep your business books up to date. Banks right now are going to ask you for interim financial statement. If you come to me for a loan and you're not able to produce for me a financial statement as of May or June, we're not going to help you. You need to have your books up to date. Have your tax returns done on time. That's another key. I know the government gave you an extension, but it doesn't mean you have to wait for the last moment to apply for taxes, because the bank won't be able to help you at that moment. Have your books up to date. That's another very important advice I can give you.
Thank you so much to our panelists for answering these questions. We'll now pause to take a few questions from our attendees. Again, please use the Q&A feature on your device to type in any questions you may have. So a few more questions on the loan logistics that we're getting from our audience. The following question is, where is the best place to get advice to fill out the forms to get the forgiveness?
I would go to your CPA. I will go to an SBDC. There's one at FIU and there's one at FAU. I will go to SCORE. Maybe your lender can help you out, but the lender has to deal with about 2,000 applications, so maybe that's not maybe a good place. But your CPA. Maybe Hispanic, I'm not sure if Hispanic Unity is offering that service, but other CDFIs may offer that service as well. Fabi, do you know of anybody else that can help?
Well,
besides what I
mainly,
mentioned?
no, that's good. The community organizations. I mean, what we could be doing at Acción is to give you the general advice and revise probably some preliminary documentation, but we are not involved because, like you said, each lender, we have a lot of applications to review. But this information that we are giving here is simple like that. It's not other thing that we are going to be, I don't know, we are hiding information. Be up to date with records, try to keep your credit. I was reading some questions from people that they are saying that people are applying and getting and they are receiving money from the SBA. This is not a party. Unfortunately, people, they think that this is a carnival and it's not. It's, you know, a commitment that you are. It's not free money. I don't believe honestly in free money because there is always a commitment. So the ones that we were receiving as the 1,000 individual 1,200. So we need to see how it's going to work for the next 2020 taxes. It's not free money. We are, you know, experienced enough just to believe that nobody will be giving you 10,000 and not being to repay unless there is a competition or something like that.
Another place to look for advice, not really to look for advice, is to answer any questions you may have, is in the SBA website themselves. Earlier, I mentioned the FAQs that SBA posts from time to time. Those ask a lot of questions that are questions that the community is asking, and they're being answered. You can go to those documents. Again, I could give it to Hispanic Unity, and I can give them the link or where they can get those frequently asked questions from the SBA, and maybe that would help you out.
Thank you so much. Now, the following question is, what would they say they are grants if they need to be paid back?
The advance never said that it was advance. It was never said that it was a grant. People are saying this is a grant, this is a, it was an advance. The same word is saying an advance. The other one that it was in place, it was the bridge loan. Bridge loan, it was something that you are receiving the money now, but you have to repay in 1 year. The idle is a loan. Nobody said that it was a grant. I don't know why that confusion is out there.
Got it.
The only thing I could think of, and Eduardo, this is not something that I know for sure, maybe if you only receive the idle loan, and that's the only loan you received, perhaps that is a grant. But if you received a PPP loan and an idle loan, it's not a grant anymore. That has to be repaid. Because you can't get free money from both sides.
Yeah, and the idle is a loan. It's not a grant.
Yeah,
the idle is a grant. So it's not a grant, it's a loan. The rise is a loan. What we are seeing right now is that what we are trying to offer are loans with low interest rate and probably a grace period if we could do that. But anyway, will be a loan. In one point, we have to pay the PPP, the idle, the rise loan, whatever loans they are there, we have to repay. With more time, with more flexibility, but we have to repay. The second way for the PPP, it will be as well the same. It will be a loan that we have to repay.
And if you didn't use it for the purpose intended, you have to repay the loan. It won't be forgiven.
Okay, really important. Now I find this a very good question. What can I do to establish credit for my business in addition to using my own personal credit?
Time.
The
key is time. I mean, when you have a business that is depending on you, because most of the time the business is depending on you with the personal guarantee, unless you are a Gap, I don't know, Apple, that they have credit by themselves, but it will be, you know, a long way to be there. So don't get confused. We have the dance that is going to provide some information, but it's not making the decision. I'm not going to be approved because I have a good information on the dance or probably with Experian credit, a business credit report. No, the personal guarantee will be playing a good amount of the final decision. So don't get confused. Try to do credit if you are going to pay back your provider, you are going to establish some kind of credit, but don't get confused that, oh, okay, I'm not going to sign the personal guarantee. You have to do it.
And it's not only credit. For a business, credit is a good portion of it, a very good portion, but you have to have cash flow. You have credit, that's great. You may have an 800 credit score and you come to me for a loan, but if you have losses and you don't have sufficient cash flow to repay the loan by a certain percentage that we require, no matter if you have an 800 credit score, we cannot give you the loan. Cash flow is what we pay as your loan. Personal credit is a different story. But business credit is not really business credit. It's cash flow. That's how you underwrite.
Cash flow.
With personal credit. With personal credit.
Very important. Okay, thank you. Now, the following question is, are you aware of any funding sources, for example, loans, grants, or etc., that caters to entrepreneurs with disabilities?
Not really.
No.
Okay, we'll make sure to research that and add it to the resources list. Let's see what other questions we have from our audience. Is there a program similar to RISE in Broward County?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah, there is.
You could reach out to the SBDC and FAU, and you can maybe contact them, and they may have more resources for Broward.
Yeah, also it will be good to connect with your commissioner. Try to look for your zip code and see who is the commissioner of your area and ask if there is some kind of resources available for entrepreneurs working in certain zip code, because we know that each zip code, they are trying to cater some type of business or something that it could be beneficial. So always have a connection with your city commissioner.
Thank you. Another question is, my company applied for the PPP and EIDL. Can I also apply to the RISE Miami-Dade program?
Yes, absolutely. You could do that.
All right. Okay, we received another question. I received a call telling me that my EIDL was missing information on my amount requested to be approved, and I should call SBA, and I could not find my login ID. The number was an 800 number, and the woman asked for my EIN or social security number. My gut feeling was that it was not really SBA, and I asked them to verify. After hearing their frustration, I hung up and I asked my score counselor. He said it was a fraud. Are you aware of any other fraud acts we should be aware of?
No, but everything that is true. Everything should be by email. They send you a letter. They do the signing for the IDL with DocuSign, asking for certain security question, and they are not going to call you. Hey, you are missing one. No, they remember the numbers of loans that they are processing. What the SBA is doing is an amazing work, because remember that they are not lenders. But anyway, they are trying to assist entrepreneurs, and they are doing their best just to provide on a timely manner this solution for you guys. But they are not going to call you, absolutely. So try to be very sure that these type of communications are not, really valid.
The other thing maybe you can do is if they have a doubt, they could call the SBA local district office and speak to one of the agents there, and they could direct you to somebody with an EIDL. Or call the SBA directly, because if you're calling the phone number that's on the letter or their phone number on the website, that's not fraud. But if someone calls you, I would not give the information, because they're not going to call you. They have way too many applications to call you.
We have a question from James. How much delay in processing loans is out there now due to COVID-19?
What loan? The EIDL loan? The PPP loan? Bank loans? It all depends, and everything has an extreme delay. On a regular bank loan, there's going to be a lot more delay because the bank wants to see what effects COVID has had on your business operations. They may want to see a cash flow projection. They want to see maybe what you're doing to recover from the impacts of COVID. EIDL loan, imagine, we've never had a pandemic like this since when the ARC loans were done in 2007. So usually when there's an economic disaster loan, it's usually Florida, Texas, that we get a hurricane or the floods. We're talking about the entire United States applying for loans. The SBA has had to hire so many subcontractors to be able to help them out. So in the beginning, there was a lot of delay. Now the delay is because there's a lot of fraud going on. A lot of people are applying for loans that don't really need to apply for a loan or that don't really merit a loan. So that's what's causing the delay. People that are trying to cheat the system. So the PPP loan's not working, not active anymore. That loan, there was not much delay. That loan was a fairly quick loan. As long as you had all the documentation provided to a bank, they can give you the loan within 1 to 2 or 3 days at the max. So everywhere there's a delay.
Thank you, Yvonne. We have time for one more question from our attendees. All right, let's see. What are my options if I'm unable to repay the unforgiven portion of my loan after the 2 to 5 year maturity? Can I refinance it?
That's up to the bank if they want to take that risk. If you're unable to pay it, the bank will ask for the SBA to pay the bank, and then you owe the money to the SBA. When you owe money to the SBA, I'm sorry to say that your tax, when you get a tax refund, you will not get a tax refund. Okay? They will deduct anything owed to the SBA from your tax refund going forward until it gets paid in full.
Thank you. Actually, we have time for one more question. What is the best way to establish credit under your business name? Did we ask that already?
Yeah, you know which question I would like probably to address is the one related to people that they are talking not only about the resources that we have with PPP, with IDOL, it's related as well on the financial education that organizations like Hispanic Unity, they are providing. So probably will be good to remind our entrepreneurs that these resources are available during the whole year. It's not only during the pandemic. So it will be good to be ready for the next webinar, the next activity that they are doing. Hispanic Unity is always very committed with SCORE. That is something that you will be taking a good advantage as well. So it will be things that we should be reminding people. There are a lot of services out there that you could probably, our business, they have to pivot maybe to another business model. Everything is online. So try to always, don't forget about marketing. Don't forget about all the resources that you have to work in order to put the business to the next level and to the new reality that we have right now. So those are the things that we have to take advantage during these type of times. We are opportunities there as well. Don't keep that in mind. Let's put it that way. Keep that in mind that opportunities out there. So try to redesign the business the way that you could be having more sales, more online presence. So that's something that the entrepreneurs, they should be doing as well.
Thank you so much. Now we have an additional question that I would like to address. The following question is, what if I cannot hire back enough employees to operate my business? Is there a staff retention period after December 31st?
That's a good question. It's not, if you hire back your employees up to December 31st, you'll be under safe harbor. It doesn't go extend December 31st. But if you're able to show proof to the bank that you tried to hire back people and they just didn't want to go work again because they got more money from unemployment, you need to show proof to the bank that you tried. You have to show the bank an offer letter that you offered the person a job. There's safe harbors now. Before, they were going to deduct from your forgiveness. That as long as you go showing good effort that you've tried to retain or hire back those employees, you won't be penalized for that. But you need to show proof. Remember, I said document, document, document.
Thank you. Now we have a comment from James. You've been immensely helpful. God bless each of you and thank you so much. Thank you, James, for joining our workshop. And this is why we're doing this.
Eduardo, if I may add, there are still loans that the SBA is offering. They're not grants and they're not the EIDL loan. They have their regular programs, which are the express loans and their 7A loans. Due to the CARES Act, those loans were increased. So before, that express loan was only $350,000. It got increased to $1 million. And the 7A loans that were maximum $5 million were increased to $10 million. That's still another option out there for clients that are needing to get help, that they need the help of the SBA. But again, you do need to have cash flow to repay the loan. But those are services that the SBA has now that gives you more ability to get more capital, that you're just not limited to 350. Okay, but those are regular SBA loans with the regular underwriting requirements, regular guarantee requirements, regular collateral requirements. Remember, all SBA loans need to be fully collateralized if you have it. If you don't have it, you don't have it. Okay, that doesn't mean you'll be denied for not having collateral. But keep in mind, there's still programs out there, but with capacity repayment, okay?
Thank you. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask this last question from Moses. Can someone pay off their car loan or a personal loan with EIDL? And the answer is no.
No. If you do, the government will come after you. It's not the purpose for what it was intended. It was not to pay off high debt. It's to help you with the economic injury that you've had. It's to help you support your sales, your operating expenses, to pay your rent, to pay your employees, to buy inventory, to be able to sell products, not to pay off high debt. That's not the purpose of the loan.
Thank you. Now, before we wrap up, wanted to hear if there are any final thoughts from our panelists, any final thoughts you would like to share with our attendees?
I mean, all the information is available for you online. Go to the SBA website or the Department of Treasury website to get all the resources that I've been talking about. Bobby?
Yeah, I would like to thank you for their participation, because this is a good start just to be sure that you have the information directly for the people that they are involved with this type of grants, loans, with everything. And also it will be good to don't start in desperation mode. The SBA also is doing everything trying to help you out as well, because see the timing that we are talking about, the grace period that we have. So try to be sure that you have the documentation ready. It's not something that it will be complicated for you. And be aware, like we had the conversation with someone making a phone call, that some people, unfortunately, they are trying to get you probably a fee just to fill out a form, just to get the idle, easy form. I heard people that they are charging for a P&L that you need in desperation. So it will be good if you could have your records internally, if you have the information, you have a good relationship with your accountant, that is not someone that it will be charging forever. Also, the online lending, be very careful about the ones. We were talking about relationship. The online lenders, they don't know you. Your bank know you. Your bank knows if there is a payment that you have to afford, and maybe they could clear up a check that is there sitting in your bank account. So be very careful with the predatory lenders, the one that they are saying, hey, this is so simple, send this documentation and it will be a daily payment of whatever. Be very careful, because those people, they are not making credit. We were talking about business credit, personal credit, and they are not going to help you out, because you will be paying a high amount of money, for and a high interest rate for the money that you are taking. So be very alert on everything that seems easy, simple, and probably it's not that easy and simple at the end.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Fabiana, for the information, your inspiring thoughts. And I encourage everyone to visit our Huff eSummit resources website, where you will find a lot of the resources that we've talked about during this workshop. And we also encourage you to visit our virtual exhibit hall. You can visit both of these at huffesummit.org. Now, we're going to turn it over to our workshop sponsor, Eduardo Bello from Amaranth, for the closing remarks of today's workshop. Thank you again, and I hope to see you at our next workshop.
So thank you all for being here. It was a pleasure sponsoring this event. I remind you, please check our website, www.amaranthbank.com. Yvonne, she's an SBA team leader there. She works very closely with all of our branches. So you have any needs, we have branches all over Miami and Broward. So feel free to come in. We'll be very glad to help you with all your needs, to learn about you, to establish a relationship like we heard today. and help you along your financial path. So we were very happy to sponsor this event, and we are looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. Catherine, you asked if there is another session next, and yes, there is our keynote speaker at 10:20. Please join us so you can learn more about Jennifer Fitzgerald, CEO and co-founder of Policygenius. And this concludes the workshop for today. Thank you so much for all our attendees for joining us. And please join us at 10:20 for a keynote speaker. Thank you very much. This was Eduardo Pineda. morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Eduardo Pineda. Thank you for joining HUF's 9th Annual E-Summit. Today is the last day of our month-long virtual event. If you've missed previous sessions, check out the resources page of hufesummit.org to watch the workshops in English and in Spanish, and tap into recommendations from subject matter experts. I'd like to take a moment to thank our presenting sponsor, Chase. Chase is a longtime supporter of Hispanic Unity of Florida, and they work to promote and support the growth of small businesses around the country. In a few minutes, you'll hear from our special guest. But first, a few housekeeping rules. You'll be able to ask questions through the Q&A feature on your Zoom control panel. We'll select questions to be addressed live by our guests, or we will type a response for all other attendees to see. Now, if we type a response, your questions and our response will appear to others for them to read as well. This webinar is being recorded. Within 24 hours, you will receive a link to this recording as well as to our event survey. Please complete the survey for this webinar to share your experiences and to help us improve. Now, we ask you to please mute your devices when you're not speaking, and please silence your phones. Now, I'd like to turn it over to our President and CEO of Hispanic Unity of Florida, Josie Bacallao.
Good morning. Thank you, Eduardo, and welcome all of you to HUF's 9th Entrepreneur Summit. Today's keynote guest is Jennifer Fitzgerald, CEO and co-founder of Policygenius. Policygenius is the nation's leading online insurance marketplace. Since 2014, Policygenius has helped over 30 million people shop for insurance and protect its customers with over $660 billion in coverage. The company provides online facilities to shop for life, long-term disability, renters and pet insurance through its highly accurate quoting engines that offer side-by-side comparisons of tailored policies. It is the leading destination for online comparison and buying of all types of insurance, including life, home, auto, and disability insurance. Jennifer Fitzgerald is the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year in New York in 2019, and one of Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business for 2018. Before starting Policygenius in 2014, she and her co-founder, Francois Delamay, were management consultants for McKinsey & Company. Jennifer has shared insights in major publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and more. Early in her career, she was Peace Corps volunteer and did stand-up comedy. Jennifer is a graduate of Columbia Law School and Florida State University. She's also a moth storyteller, which is really impressive. Welcome, Jennifer. We look forward to hearing from you shortly. And now, one of my favorite people, we're incredibly lucky to be joined again by our next guest. In a journalism career covering news from high global finance to neighborhood infrastructure, Tom Hudson is the Vice President of News and Special Correspondent for WLRN. He hosts and produces the Sunshine Economy and anchors the Florida Roundup, in addition to leading the organization's news engagement strategy. Hudson was most recently the co-anchor and managing editor of Nightly Business Report on public television. In that position, Hudson reported on topics such as Federal Reserve interest rate policy, agriculture, and global trade. Tom writes a weekly column for the Miami Herald, the McClatchy Tribune News Service. He appears regularly on LA and Chicago-based radio stations for commentary on the economy and investment. We are very, very fortunate to have both Jennifer and Tom, and I will now turn it over to you.
Josie, thank you so much, and congratulations on a virtual summit here. Such an important time to talk about entrepreneurship in South Florida. And Jennifer, great to have you along to hear and share your story, the story of Peace Corps and stand-up comedy and high finance and insurance and working in a virtual marketplace. We're excited to have you here. And let's just start with what's immediately happening, of course, which is the pandemic. And so many small and medium-sized companies have been affected here in South Florida and across the nation, across the world. And entrepreneurs have been affected as well. How has it impacted your business? And how have you had to pivot or change practices?
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Josie. It's great to be here. So, unfortunately, we, like everybody else, had to pivot pretty quickly back in March when it became clear that this was a serious issue. So what we had to do was basically transition everybody out of the office. At the time, we had over 300 employees, and we had to pivot them out of the office, close the office, make sure people had equipment to work from home. Now, the bright side is we are a tech company, and so we were able to 100% move everybody to remote work. People are still remote working. Both of our offices in New York and North Carolina are still closed for the foreseeable future until we can figure out a safe way to return to the office. So that's been the immediate impact, was making sure that our employees were, comfortable and safe, and everybody could resume working. On the business end, what we found is that it actually triggered more people to search for insurance online. One of our big products is life insurance, especially in March and April when the news was all about the pandemic and people had no idea what were going on. We actually saw a spike in interest of people searching online, going to Google, searching for life insurance, and trying to make sense of the insurance landscape with this pandemic. So I think overall we count ourselves very fortunate that being a tech company, we were able to move everybody to remote, and we continue to be remote and trying to find ways to onboard people and keep culture and connectivity going, even though people are dealing with school situations, childcare, and a whole host of challenges that none of us foresaw back in January when the year started.
Yeah, we want to hear more about how you're able to accomplish that. But you talk about life insurance, and that's where Policygenius really began. Tell us first, take us back. Did you have an aha moment when you were at McKinsey of, oh, this idea is an actual business? It's more than just an idea. And what was that moment? If you did, what was that moment like? Or if it was an evolution, how did you come to that realization and then begin to put the pieces in place to take that idea from aspirational to execution?
Yeah, I liken it more to kind of a seed that got planted and started to sprout a little bit. So when I was a consultant at McKinsey, insurance companies would hire a team of McKinsey consultants to come in to solve problems, typically around marketing or growth strategy, or, hey, we want to increase our market share over the next several years. How do we do that? And there were just a series of findings that we uncovered in our research. So for example, insurance agents are still the main distribution channel for insurance in the US. The average age of an insurance agent is 59 years old, and most are looking to retire or exit the market in several years, right? So that was kind of the initial seed, like, oh, that feels like an opportunity, right? If your major workforce is older, they're looking to retire, what's next, right? How do you continue to distribute these products? So that was the first. And then the second is we started looking at other financial services like banking, like investing, a lot of which, really digitized, took advantage of the rise of mobile phones, and insurance was a laggard in that respect. It was still very brick and mortar, still pen and paper based. So again, it was just a series of insights that finally led us to say, you know what, we think there's an idea here. Let's test it out. So we both took a leave of absence. We were very fortunate that we could do that, kind of test out the idea, see if there was, the ability for us to get traction, build a prototype website, see if we can get customers to it. And then we went from there.
Insurance can be capital intensive because you are essentially accepting risk and then looking to put that off on somebody else. I want to remind our folks that we are taking your questions through the Q&A tab. Just go ahead and type in your question there and we'll get to them throughout our conversation here with Jennifer. An entrepreneur has to have a high tolerance for risk, certainly, Jennifer. But moving into insurance, perhaps there's even a higher appetite for risk because the capital, the finance needed, and just the general level of risk involved. Where does that come from? What's that source for you that you are able to kind of see that, accept it, and operate within it to a point where, growing a business pretty significantly?
I think, risk is very much a personal decision, right? Everybody has their own appetite for risk, their own tolerance for risk, their own ability to, invest in risky opportunities, right? So when we started the business 7 years ago, we were in a pretty fortunate position to be able to take on more risk. I think I just finished paying off my law school student loans. I saved some money from working for several years. Didn't have a mortgage, didn't have any kids that I had to think about. So really it was kind of a prime opportunity to say now or never to starting a business, because it is a risky venture. Most small businesses don't make it past year 5 or year 6. There's a very high burnout rate across all types of small businesses, whether it's in the services industry or the software industry. So it was very much a personal decision and a personal calculus of how much do I believe in this opportunity? What's the possible downside to investing a few years in this? What's my fallback plan if it doesn't work out, or it's not what I think it's going to be? So it's a very personal decision. I've talked to a lot of potential founders, people who really want to quit their job and start building a company. And this is the calculation that I walk them through, right? That I can't tell them, hey, this is a worthwhile risk and this is an opportunity worth pursuing. It's very much a personal decision because everybody's financial situation and risk appetite is extraordinarily different. What I will say was what makes it easier is really doing your homework about the opportunity, right? Understanding, is this a product or a service that the market wants? What does the competitive landscape looks like? How easy is it to get your suppliers or your business partners onto the platform? How easy is it to acquire customers and differentiate yourselves in the market? So for me, I'm more risk averse than my co-founder, but what got me comfortable with it was doing that homework and spending several months, looking at the market, talking to people in the market to get comfortable with the nature of the risk and our ability to take it on.
So you mentioned the co-founder. Working with a partner, a single partner, or multiple partners can disperse the risk in starting up a business, but it can also increase the risk if it's not a good match, right? If the risk tolerance is very different, or you have skills that may not be so complementary. So how has that worked out? You mentioned your risk tolerance maybe not quite as high as your business partner.
Thankfully, it's worked out great. 7 years in, we still, see eye to eye. And I think, it's like a marriage, right? So you should have those difficult conversations up front. And that's what we did. And we said, what do we want to get out of this? What roles do we want to play, right? I was the CEO, he wasn't the CEO. Is that going to be fine? If we raise capital, what's that going to look like? What's our equity share in the business? So you really have to get all those, topics out of the way first, because better to get it out of the way first than, 1, 2, 3 years down the road, and all of a sudden there's a power struggle, or there's a change in strategic direction because neither of you see eye to eye. So de-risking that partnership up front is huge. And I've seen, co-founding and business partner relationships go completely sideways. And I've seen it be the real reason why the company is successful. And for us, that healthy partnership is a big reason for our success. And we were able to divide up responsibilities and, take on a much bigger problem than if it was just one of us working on our own.
In the early days, Jennifer, when it was just the two partners in the pool, how did you approach disagreement or a conflict in strategy, even recognizing perhaps you had complementary skills and it was this person's area of expertise, but when there was a disagreement?
I think thankfully we haven't had too many disagreements because we're both very fact-based, right? So if there's a problem that doesn't have a clear black and white solution, it's incumbent upon the person to bring the facts to the table and saying, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Here's 3 ways we could go about it. My recommendation is option 1. Here's why. And you just have a very fact-based discussion, and it takes the emotion out of it. And sometimes there aren't enough facts, right? Sometimes it's really down to, again, risk. One of the initial disagreements that we had And there weren't a ton of facts. It was, at the end of the day, about risk was when we were raising our first significant round of venture capital, and our initial term sheet that came in was for an amount and for an evaluation that I think was on the low side. But again, me being more risk averse, I was more comfortable with it. I was inclined to take it. You know, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Right.
And again, he was more, you know, willing to push the envelope and say, no, we should push for more. We should do one more round of negotiations. Let's talk to people who've been through this and see if this is a, you know, valuation that's acceptable in the market. So again, fact-based discussion. There was no right answer because it boiled down to, you know, would we be willing to take the risk to reject a term sheet to try to get a better term sheet? At the end of the day, I was comfortable following his approach, and thankfully it worked out. I talked to other people, I talked to other CEOs, asked how they approach these negotiation situations, and I got comfortable with it. But again, I think having that fact-based conversation and stating the unknowns and the why behind it, right? So when I told him, hey, I don't disagree with your approach, but I'm just personally uncomfortable with, you know, turning down a term sheet when we've got 3 months of cash left in the bank.
Yeah.
So once you put in there the why behind your reasoning, that also makes it easier to have conversations about it.
For those who are joining this webinar, who may have joined us during the American Dreamers several days ago, one of the messages that the American Dreamer awardees that we're delivering was, don't wait for all the information, because you're never going to have all the information. You're going to have to make decisions that are informed with imperfect information. And then you're going to have to reevaluate those decisions as new information comes in. We have a question here. When you were testing your business idea and seeing an aging workforce and other financial services going digital, did you know at the beginning you were starting a digital online company?
Yes, we did. That was I think what you have to have is an ingoing hypothesis about what the answer is and what the market wants. So from day one, we said a digital platform, a digital marketplace like the Expedia for insurance is the way that we wanted to go. And that was the concept that we wanted to test.
And then the follow-up here is, how is building a digital company different than a brick and mortar company?
It's hard to do. I think the hardest thing for me, I'm not a software engineer. I'm, you know, not technical. I'm a business person, is that you can't do it yourself. And you have to find technical partners. You have to build a technical team. And when you are a business person who hasn't done that before, it's a lot of risk again, right? You have to trust that, you know, the person that you hire to put in charge of that is doing the right thing. It's not, I can look at a spreadsheet and check the work. I can't look at a code base and check the work, right? So I think that was the most unnerving thing, is, you know, building a product that I couldn't roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty with.
And how did you handle giving up that control? Because ultimately, you know, scale up entrepreneurship is about delegating responsibility. And so from the get-go, it sounds like you had to delegate that responsibility.
Absolutely, from the very beginning. And the big thing was finding a technical leader who we could trust. And so we interviewed and met a lot of people to be our first chief technology officer. Eventually, we found somebody who was recommended by another CEO in our network who we trusted. We did a lot of due diligence on that person. We found other technical founders who would interview them to make sure that, you know, what they were saying was correct. Because at the end of the day, I could interview for, you know, communication skills or business judgment, or are you going to be able to hire and manage people? But for technical interviews, we brought in other people to do it, to make sure that, you know, they were up to the task. So it was one of the hardest things initially, because, you know, again, we had to figure out and get pretty smart pretty quickly about how to, you know, hire the right leader for what would be the biggest area of investment for the business.
Jennifer, it reminds me of a fundamental concept in journalism, which is, if your mother tells you she loves you, check it out.
Yeah, trust but verify.
Right,
trust
exactly.
But verify.
Yeah, it brings up something else around this idea of a kitchen cabinet of advisors. And for entrepreneurs, that kitchen cabinet can be in the same household. It can be family members. there's official advisors that are going to be key toward, building a board or those kind of things. But there's so much more of a community of entrepreneurship. And certainly here in South Florida, where entrepreneurship is so important to job growth, especially new companies are where jobs generally have come from. And I would anticipate that to be the same here probably as we try to emerge from this pandemic. Tell us about kind of how you approached that unofficial advisor roles and the types of folks that you already had in the fold, and maybe folks who weren't in your LinkedIn network, but you said, I got to figure out a way to get connected to that person.
Absolutely. It's absolutely critical. And it's the number one thing that I encourage first-time business owners, first-time founders to do, is find that, the kitchen cabinet of advisors. And they don't have to be official advisors. You don't have to constitute a board of advisors. You just have to have people who you can drop an email to, get on a phone call with, and ask, questions without fear of judgment, right? So I think early on, what we did was, thankfully, we had networks from business school and McKinsey of people who had gone into tech companies or started their own tech companies. And so, we did a lot of informational interviews with them. How do you approach hiring technical talent? How do you approach raising capital? What does that look like when you are, a two-person team? And then over time, that network evolves. You meet more people. The nature of your business questions and your challenges change. I think the key thing for me, and the advice I give to people starting out, is you want to find somebody who's 12 to 24 months ahead of you on the curve. So if you have a business in X area, find another business owner in X area, maybe not necessarily competitive if that's an issue, but something adjacent to it or analogous to it, who's seen what that stretch ahead of you looks like. That's the most important thing, right? Because they'll tell you, here are the pitfalls that I went through and you can avoid. Here's what I learned, right? Because that helps you shorten the cycle. If you can find somebody who can tell you, hey, over the next 18 to 24 months, these are the things you have to watch out and solve for.
One of the questions coming up in the chat box is, when you connected with CEOs, where did you find them? Was it through chambers of commerce, social interactions? Remember those way back when we could get together for an actual cup of coffee and not have to meet, not be in my living room and you in your living room and have to meet this way?
I know, back in the olden days when we could meet in person and there were meetups. So every possible way. Thankfully, again, between my co-founder and myself, we had a decent network from business school, law school, our time at McKinsey. So we would use that network, ask for introductions. I live in New York City, and that's where we started the business. And thankfully, there's a pretty nice ecosystem of founders and entrepreneurs and business owners here that have meetups and ways to build your network there. So it's really just, kind of figuring out who's out there, understanding how introductions are made, and just meeting as many people as possible in as early as you can, in order to understand, what don't you know, who would be helpful to meet, and again, how you can add value to that network too. Because at the end of the day, you might be more of a taker of advice and insight, but you should get back into that ecosystem too.
And it can be listening closely to the folks that you already have within your universe and really hearing something maybe that you've heard before, but you didn't listen to it, right? In other words,
Absolutely.
Some kind of area of expertise or interest or passion that they may have that could connect you into a world that's got a wealth of information that you may not be aware of.
Absolutely. And, the nice thing now about social media is you can identify people on Twitter. You can, follow people on Twitter. You can figure out what they read. There's a lot of great newsletters, digital email newsletters that are geared toward founders and entrepreneurs. So there's just a wealth of information out there. And the nice thing that I've seen is a lot of founders and business owners will blog and write about what they're doing, right? Write about, hey, here's how I, hired my first executive, or here's how I thought about doing marketing and distribution. So there is a wealth of information online, a lot of email newsletters from successful and repeat founders and business owners that we did a lot of reading in the first days. And I still subscribe to a whole host of them because that's where some of the best education is.
One of the questions that just popped up was, what's your favorite book or publisher or podcast? I'll add into that maybe industry newsletter that you could share just off the top of your head.
Sure, a bunch of them. So there are several great podcasts for business owners and entrepreneurs. How I Built This is a great one. Reid Hoffman, who is the founder of LinkedIn, has a great podcast where he brings in successful founders. So once you search for those on like the Apple podcast, you'll get recommended more and more. The Harvard Business Review has a great podcast that talks about the full gamut of business issues, from like hiring to culture to figuring out product market fit. In terms of newsletters and sites that I go to, First Round Capital, they are an early stage venture fund. They have a publication that's online, and they do a newsletter called First Round Review. And it's one of the best ones out there for early stage founders and entrepreneurs. It covers everything from the more technical things around building a product to how to build your first leadership team, and how to think about scaling culture if you're a company that's growing. So I like First Round Review as well. And then there are a lot of like marketing and SEO blogs as well. I think there's like the eMarketer, and there's a whole host of things. I probably have too many newsletters coming to my inbox now, but so I think if you look for anything, there's probably a podcast and an email newsletter about it.
Indeed, there is. Thank you for mentioning a public media podcast to start with How I Built This. So I appreciate
I love
that.
I love that podcast.
As a public media person myself. But it does, you just alluded to it. Like, how do you find the time? Do you approach it in that Saturday mornings are for me to catch up on this kind of thing? Or is it, or are you a snacker? You grab it when you can? Kind of how do you approach that aspect? Because the fire hose of information and ideas for an entrepreneur is there. It takes real skill to be able to pick out which pieces are going to be meaningful for you and for whatever position, whatever situation you may find yourself in.
I'm more of a snacker, to use your vocabulary, so I'll just read when I can. In the morning before I start my meetings for the day, I'll go through my inbox and read some of the newsletters that get delivered there. For listening to podcasts or longer form reads, it's usually on the weekends or in the evenings after I've signed off for the day. So I don't have a set time. And I just read the book Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney. Great book, recommended. But he's one of those that gets up at 4 a.m. to start his day. That is not me. So I'll read more in the evenings.
Are you one that stays up until 4 a.m?
Oh, no.
You're not the night owl either. Okay.
I need 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Questions still coming in the Q&A chat, and some really great ones. Since you're not a technical person, what did you and your partner bring to the business that would lead you to believe that you would be successful?
Great question.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that our technical leaders asked us when we were interviewing them. So, building the product technically is one thing, but at the end of the day, you can build the greatest product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, your customers don't know about it, it doesn't matter. So building the product is one thing, but how do you do marketing? How do you do distribution? How do you, raise capital in order to fund marketing and distribution? Assuming you have the product and then you have distribution, how do you hire other functions? How do you hire HR people, finance people? So all of those things we brought to the table. So my co-founder took on marketing for the first several years of the business. He had a marketing background from business school. So he took that piece, so marketing, SEO, content, and then I took, finance, operations, and a lot of the internal functions. So, I think a lot of people, assume that once you build a great product, and it's a digital product, that's that. Distribution is the name of the game. And I've seen great products who just can't find customers, can't figure out marketing and distribution, and they die on the vine.
Indeed, and certainly in the insurance side, as you mentioned, the model has been through brokers. And what Policygenius is trying to do is to kind of break that model or disrupt it, right, to use the vernacular in entrepreneurialism. And a question a little bit related to that here, Jennifer, from our chat box. After all the testing and market evaluation, what was your aha moment that this was something to go forward with?
Customer feedback was probably the big thing that tipped me over the edge to quit my job and start the company. And I would highly recommend it as part of your market research, is actually, build a quick and dirty, or the lean startup prototype, and get it in the hands of customers, right? It doesn't have to be a working thing. It could even be just like a simple web page or a mock-up on a PowerPoint, and get customer feedback. Understand if this is something that they would use, this is something they would value, this is something they would tell their friends about, is this something they would pay for? I think once we got initial customer feedback and saw people, using the product, telling people about it. And again, in the early days, it wasn't thousands, it was, a few dozen folks. And I think that was enough data points for me to say that there's an opportunity here worth, pursuing full time. So I think what happens, to your point earlier, Tom, about people waiting for perfect information before they act, I think a lot of founders who are in the product or services business want to build the perfect product or engineer the perfect service solution before they put it in front of a customer. And then it's too late, because you don't know what's perfect. At the end of the day, the customer determines if it's a good enough solution. So get something in the hands of your customer as soon as possible in order to get that feedback, because the odds are your first iteration at it is not going to be perfect, and it's going to need some tweaking, it's going to need some optimization. So the earlier you can get that feedback, the quicker that you can actually get a good product or service out in market.
I often think of the visualization of that when you look at sidewalks that come together at a 90-degree angle, right? That's what the engineers built. They want the consumer, the customer to take a 90-degree turn. And then you see kind of this dirt path worn in there where people come off the sidewalk and just like, that's the user experience. That's what users are telling you to do.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have to listen to the users, right? You can have, every conviction in the world that this is the product or this is the service, and I know this is the right answer. But oftentimes what I've seen is you build a product or service for a customer of one, like yourself, and that's not going to be scalable. You've got to build something that the market wants and that customers will value.
In the case of Policygenius, was that initial customer, was it the buyer of insurance, or was it the insurance companies that provide the coverage?
It was the buyer of insurance was our customer. So it's we were able to get some initial insurance companies to work with us. They don't pay you unless you actually make sales, right? So relatively little risk for them. So we had to prove that we can actually find consumers and get them to use our platform and get them to buy insurance and start, building that traction. So from day one, we were just in the minds of our customer, right? Thinking about the customer journey, what gets somebody to think about insurance, who do they go to, what's their first step, how do they research, do they go online, do they ask a friend, do they talk to a financial advisor? So really understand, and there's a lot of great reading out there around the customer decision journey. What's the trigger? What's the research stage? How many brands do they consider? What finally gets them to purchase? So we did a lot of work understanding what that customer decision journey was for insurance.
And for insurance and for Policygenius, it was a focus as much on education as it was about the product itself, the insurance coverage, because it's anyone who has bought insurance, life or auto or home or storm in Florida, my goodness, like just trying to compare policies can be complicated enough, let alone just understanding what a policy is stipulating.
Absolutely.
And a big investment on the education side.
Yeah, and that was from an understanding and talking to customers. Like some of our first market research was talking to customers, a lot of friends and family, and we asked them, when was the last time you shopped for insurance? What led you to do that? What were the first steps as soon as you realized you needed to look at home insurance or life insurance? And across the board, people wanted to do homework. They wanted to understand, and they would go to Google and they would enter phrases like how to shop for life insurance, or how much life insurance do I need, or what should my homeowner's insurance policy have? So there's a lot of education and research that's part of that decision journey that's not there for like shopping for flights, for example. We all know how to shop for flights. We all just go to Kayak or Expedia and we enter in our destination because it's a transaction we do all the time. So you don't need to do research, but for more infrequent purchases, that research is key, which is why we invested early on in building out a library of consumer content to help the shopping experience.
Jennifer, a few questions in the chat box regarding challenges, right? Some rough waters. It's never a smooth journey. It's never a straight line journey for an entrepreneur. So one question about how do you, Jennifer, deal with moments of personal doubt, professional doubt about either your skills or the direction of the company, and how you manage kind of doubts along the way and communicate those and deal with them internally, but also externally?
I think the best thing that I've found, and again, people are very different in how they internalize stress and deal with stress. Again, going back to the Bob Iger book, The Disney CEO, he was talking about himself. He's one of those who crisis happens and he's just calm, cool, and collected and focuses on it as a problem to solve. I get there, but I do personalize and internalize a lot of it, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, my employees may not see me stressed, but internally I'm like, oh my God, this is a huge problem. But the thing that's helped me over the years is talking to a peer group. I've got a peer group of CEOs of similar size companies that I meet with once a month now on Zoom, and we just talk through those. And I think the thing that has helped me is that the problems that we face, whether it's I've hired the wrong executive or hey, we're over budget on marketing spend and we're not, you know, seeing the efficiencies that we want in this part of the business, is talking to other CEOs and realizing literally everybody goes through these challenges, right? Everybody's made a bad hire. Everybody's, you know, faced a month or two of like challenging growth. And that's been the big thing that's helped me, is having that peer group that I can talk to regularly and bounce ideas off of, or even just commiserate like, hey, I'm dealing with X problem. And when everybody around the table is nodding, going, yep, so are we, you just feel so much better about it. And because, as I think your audience knows, being an entrepreneur is a lonely venture, right? It's a lot of stress. You feel like you're on an island by yourself having to solve all these problems. So get more people on that island with you, and maybe not employees, maybe it's just a peer group of other business owners that you can talk to and bounce ideas off of. That's been absolutely fundamental for me.
So one question about a specific type of challenge: how do you deal with a big financial loss while still trying to grow the business?
Yeah, I think the big thing that we got in front of early on, and the challenge changes over time as you get bigger, is having an understanding of your finances, being very good at building out a budget, and then forecasting what the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months looks like, right, under different scenarios. So I think a big thing for us is understanding the drivers of the business, right? So the drivers of our business is marketing spend, the efficiency of that marketing spend, traffic to the website, our ability to have sales staff to handle the volume. So we, you know, do forward-looking forecasts based on, okay, what if marketing spend does X? Well, what if it does Y, right? And so don't do infinite ones, but do 2 or 3 scenarios to understand, okay, this is how it could wrong. Here's how I'm going to plan for that. Here's how much I think we need to have in terms of financial cushion. So you can't avoid everything, but I think if you have an understanding of like the 3 to 4 drivers, the 3 to 4 things that could go wrong, right? And what are those key assumptions that are driving the success of your business? And then you project that out a few months, you can avoid those all of a sudden things that, you know, take you by surprise. Now, unfortunately, nobody predicted this situation that we're in.
Right.
It took all of us by surprise, but now I think for those of us who have been able to survive it, now it should have all of us thinking, okay, you know, how do we become more resilient, right? How do I look at risks in a different way that I wasn't looking at before?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, the pandemic has waylaid so many businesses, and I would think and you've alluded to it, no matter how creative one was in thinking about future risk. I think, you know, if you were a restaurateur or a supplier of, bar equipment, I don't think, you know, pandemic or, you know, national shutdown of the industry ever came up in planning for the 2021 fiscal year.
No.
Yeah. And so how do you think that change? How does it change for Policygenius now that, you know, it's a known risk? I mean, it was always kind of this ethereal risk. 1918 was back then, and, you know, 1956, and now it's clear and present and in the boardroom, it's in the budget talks now, right?
Right. So for us, what we're thinking about is, one, just the physical aspects of it, right?
Yeah.
You know, we early on, a few months ago, we made a decision like, do we keep office space? Do we not keep our office
What'd you decide?
spaces? We decided to keep our office space. We said, you know what, at some point, we don't know when, we don't know how things will go back to a new normal, right? And we just made the decision that having a physical office space is important. So that was decision one. But what we've said and what we've worked on is that, physical presence might look different, right? It might be 2 days in the office, 3 days not in the office. It might look like different work schedules. So we're thinking through that. And then we've also been planning, like, if this happens again, right? If we return to the office and something happens again that we're fully remote, how do we make sure that we are prepared for it and we're not, double hitting our P&L because now we've got full office space and we've got to equip home equipment. So those are the things that we're thinking through. But I know a lot of other entrepreneurs and company CEOs who've decided to not have office space for the foreseeable future. So they've not renewed their leases. They're fully remote. They are now hiring fully remote workers across the country. And so a lot of companies have taken very different approaches to this. So we'll see how it all nets out in the next year or two.
So we were just talking about kind of dealing with challenges and unexpected and some expected challenges. On the other side, a question in the chat box is, what was the first big kind of business win that you celebrated for the company?
For us, it was coverage in the New York Times. Which was huge, and it actually kind of overwhelmed us with inbound customer volume, and it took us weeks to dig out of that. We like to call those champagne problems, but champagne problems are still problems. So we got covered in the New York Times by Ron Lieber, who is a personal finance and money columnist for the New York Times. Drove a lot of attention and traffic to the site. A lot of people requesting quotes for insurance. Back then, our process was still more manual on the back end. We hadn't built out everything on the back end, so we were doing everything manually. We had spreadsheets tracking requests. It was a lot. So, but at the same time, it felt like a huge win and validation by respected authority in the space, and validation because a lot of people were coming to the site. So that was probably the first big win for us. That felt like great. It feels like we're on to something.
A good friend of mine who runs a meatpacking plant in the Midwest said their big win was when they got a deal with Walmart, and it was enormous. But that was exactly his reaction. Like the eyes wide, like the dog caught the car all of a sudden, right? Is that what it felt like in the office?
Yeah, and then we were like, now what?
Right.
So there's probably 2 minutes of cheering and patting each other on the backs, and then we started to see all the requests come in on the site, and we were like, now what?
Right. So some more questions here in the chat box, and it's still open for folks here as we're talking with Jennifer. Talking about insurance companies, what was the conversation like that persuaded them to give this new, untested company and platform and sales channel a chance?
Great question. So for us, it was really around understanding what they were trying to solve for and what their business challenges were. And thankfully, we had insider knowledge from our consulting days. Like, we knew that they were worried about distribution. They were worried about the fact that their agents were retiring. They were worried about, hey, how do we get in front of this millennial customer, who we don't know how to get in front of because they don't have insurance agents. They aren't necessarily watching, TV advertisements in a way that their parents did. So we also knew that they wanted to get in front of a millennial customer. So what we did was we pitched them, hey, here's how we're different, right? And here are some data points and some proof points around us being able to attract that younger millennial customer in their 30s. Here's how they shop for insurance versus how older consumers shop for insurance. And here's how we're going to make sure that they have a great experience and you're able to get your product in front of those customers. So whenever you're pitching any business partner, it's really around what problem of theirs are you trying to solve? And do they have trust that you actually are going to be able to solve that problem? So we knew what problem they were trying to solve, which was distribution to a millennial customer base. And so that's how we were able to successfully frame those pitches.
That's the value proposition in what can be sometimes a commoditized business of just of risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Question here about hiring, which is so key. Take us back to the moment you and your partner business partner there, and the first hire, the first outside person that you had to go after? I think it was a technical person. You may have alluded to this earlier, a software engineer, perhaps not, but clarify that for us. But then also, what was that conversation like in that first hire, and how has that hiring, how has the hiring considerations evolved as the company's grown?
Right. So the very first person we hired, who is still with us to this day, was a product designer. So he's a digital software designer. So he is the person who designed the user experience, designed the website, designed everything that went there. I want to say that it was a far more sophisticated process than it actually was. But, you know, we were sitting in our, you know, wherever we were working at the time, and we were like, okay, if we're going to build a site, we need a site designer, because neither of us knows how to do that. And I said, well, I know one person who does that. and like, so a lot of times it's better to be lucky than good.
All and your eggs in one basket.
We were lucky that the one person I knew who could do that actually was great. And he's been with us for over 7 years now.
Wow.
And then the second person that we hired was our chief technology officer. To hire and oversee the software engineers building everything. So that in the early days, it's really just like kind of hand-to-hand combat and finding like that one person who'll take a chance on you, right? When you're the early days, you don't have a brand, it's just the two of you. You're convincing somebody else to take a chance on you, right? Especially this was back in 2013, 2014, like the economy was hot and there were just jobs all over the place. So it's really around getting somebody to take a chance on you. Now, you know, it's a bit reversed, right? So we have a bigger brand, we have more of a presence, right? We have a track record. So now it's more around assessing for fit, and it's far more structured and of a repeatable process, because we are interviewing probably, you know, upwards of 5, 10, 20 people a day for our open roles. And so it's now more of a process, right? And we've invested a lot in the years in a structured and fair interview process. And we have found that that actually leads to better outcomes. So for example, when we open a role, let's say we open a marketing manager role, we figure out, okay, what are the 3 to 4 must-have criteria for this role? What do they need to be able to do? What kind of experience do we want them to have? So you've got your 3 to 5 criteria, and we just put on a spreadsheet what that interview plan looks like, right? So what's that first phone screen? What are the things we're going to look for? The first round of interviews, who's interviewing? What are they assessing for? What are the questions they're going to ask? And so it's far more of a structured process now, which means that we can, you know, repeat it more efficiently. And it's also just a much more fair process for the candidates too, because we can then ensure that candidate A is getting the very same experience as candidate B.
So I was just going to ask about DEI and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that is intersecting, how that has intersected that process as it's become more formalized by necessity as the company has grown, but how the diversity, equity, and inclusion considerations have been embedded perhaps in that formalization.
Yeah, that's been a big piece to our DEI, is around objectivity, fairness, and structure, not just in the interviewing process, but also our internal performance review and promotion and compensation increase process. So we do that once a year. Again, we've got a very structured way to evaluate performance. It depends on role and tenure. It's all transparent on the website. We've got a spreadsheet of, you know, here's what a marketing manager success criteria looks like. If you're a director of marketing, here's what it looks like. If you are a data analyst, here's what it looks like. We do reviews and compensation reviews once a year. Again, a big part of DEI is around fairness to access of resources and fairness and like opportunity evaluation. So that's been a big thing. The other thing that we have now tried to focus on is diversity at the, what we call the top of the funnel. So candidates that we're interviewing, where we're advertising open jobs, to make sure that we're seeing a diverse slate of candidates, not just across racial diversity, but gender diversity as well, to make sure that, you know, people who are coming into our process, like we see as diverse a slate as possible.
And I'm wondering how DEI is influencing sources of capital for you. As you know, I don't know if you're in the process of doing a capital round, or if you want to share that, or if you're looking at doing one in 21, or just, I think you may have just completed one prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
But how you're thinking, how Policygenius is thinking of DEI maybe comes into that process with the source of capital.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, on the one hand, it's unfortunate that it took so long for it to be front and center of the conversation, but what we are finding in the investor community and the venture capital and private equity community is that DEI is now something that they're thinking about in their portfolio of companies. It's a area that they investigate in due diligence. How is this company performing on DEI fronts? And they're also looking at it in terms of their staffing, right? I think it's probably no surprise to everybody on this call that a lot of the investors in venture capital and private equity, or banks, tend to be pretty homogenous in terms of who makes those decisions, who are the gatekeepers to that types of capital. So what we've seen, and we applaud the change, is a lot more focus on DEI in terms of the staffing of those investors as well.
I've got two more questions here in our last 2 minutes. First one is Policygenius oriented. You began in life insurance, you've expanded into home, into auto. Any plans into health or other types of insurance coverages?
We actually just expanded for the first time beyond insurance. So we like to think of ourselves as financial protection. Insurance is a big piece of that, but a big part of financial protection is also estate planning. So having your will in place, having an estate plan, having your trust, if the trust is the right answer. So we actually just launched that product solution a few weeks ago. So we've got a mobile app in the App Store, and you can get an attorney-approved will and estate plan in your state for a very low price. So that was something that we've been working on for over a year, because people who shop for life insurance tend to also be thinking about estate planning as well. So that was an exciting product launch we did a few weeks ago.
Well, congratulations on launching a product in this environment.
Yeah, it was a tough challenge, but we're excited to get it out there.
Yeah, I imagine. Final question here, Jennifer. As we mentioned in Josie's intro, you are a storyteller on The Moth, which is a public radio program about real people telling real stories. It's fantastic. I'm not going to ask you to retell that story. I'll just tell folks, if you're interested, just search Jennifer Fitzgerald, The Moth. It'll come up on your internet search. But are you still had you done any stand-up comedy prior to the pandemic?
No, it's been a while. This job has been pretty all-consuming in terms of time. Now I joke that the time I get on a mic is like in front of our company all hands.
You miss it?
I do, yeah. But I get creative outlets in terms of our marketing. We do fun things at the company, like we do our kind of annual awards. So I still have creative outlets, and then once a week we do company all hands. So. I get a little bit of an outlet there.
Very good. Jennifer Fitzgerald, the CEO and co-founder of Policygenius. Thanks so much for spending the time with us here, Jennifer. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Same here, Tom.
Eduardo, I'll throw it back to you. Thanks for the opportunity, Eduardo.
Thank you, Tom, for your insightful questions and engagement with our keynote guest. And Jennifer, thank you so much for inspiring us with your story and your journey today. Wow, what a fantastic story and inspiring story. Now I'll turn it over to our president and CEO, Josie Bacallao.
Thank you, Eduardo, and thank you, Jennifer and Tom. This was fantastic. Since 2011, the Entrepreneur Summit has recognized and shared the stories of more than 60 businesswomen and men with a variety of backgrounds, experiences, and industry expertise. We've created an award to celebrate this very special entrepreneurial spirit and the success of hardworking individuals and the power of dreams. The 2020 American Dreamer Award, sponsored by JM Family Enterprises, Inc., is an original piece of art designed and created by Huff, for Huff, by international artist Evelyn Valdirio. Jennifer, congratulations for joining this impressive group of entrepreneurs, and thank you for inspiring all of us. And now for a few final thoughts from our very special guest, Jennifer Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Josie, and thanks to everybody. I was very excited to get invited to speak here, very honored to receive this award. I have a lot of ties to Florida. I went to college there, and a lot of ties to the Hispanic community as well. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I was in Honduras for 4 years. So this meant a lot to receive the award and to address your audience and your membership. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your inspiring thoughts and comments today. And now I'd also would like to thank our presenting sponsor, Chase. We invite all of you to check out our virtual exhibit hall. At 11:30, our next workshop will take place in Spanish, Paycheck Protection Program, and other working capital, Programa de Protección, del Pago, del Salario, y otros capitales circulantes. If you've missed any of our previous workshops or sessions, you can access the recordings online. Thank you for joining us for our very first virtual Entrepreneur Summit. And we wish all of you success. And as we are now all love to say, please stay safe and well. Thank you.
Muy buenos días y gracias por acompañarnos esta mañana. Mi nombre es Eduardo Pineda y yo voy a ser el moderador para la sesión del día de hoy en la Cumbre de Empresarios 2020. Este es el noveno evento e-Summit anual y es nuestro primer año trayendo este evento de una manera virtual. Así que estamos increíblemente emocionados y esperamos que ustedes también lo estén. En pocos minutos oirán a nuestro patrocinador del taller y a nuestros panelistas. Además de proveer una variedad de servicios a la comunidad, Hispanic Unity también se encuentra profundamente involucrado en el compromiso civil. Hay dos maneras muy importantes en que ustedes pueden involucrarse en su comunidad este año. Una es respondiendo el censo y la otra es votando en las elecciones. Obviamente, los animamos a que hagan ambas cosas. También los dueños de pequeños negocios y empresas en el condado de Broward pueden ayudar a que nuestro condado sea contado en el censo del 2020, al otorgar 15 minutos para que sus empleados llenen el censo. Para más información y materiales adicionales, por favor no duden en enviar un correo electrónico al señor Otto Valenzuela, y ustedes pueden ver su información en la pantalla, el señor Otto, o se las podemos enviar. Las próximas elecciones se llevarán a cabo el martes 3 de noviembre y la fecha límite para que se registre para votar es el 5 de octubre. Así que visite becomeavoter.org para registrarse y asegurarse de que su voz y también su voto sean escuchados. A continuación, antes de empezar, algunas cosas que debemos de tener en cuenta. Usted podrá realizar preguntas a través de la opción de Q&A que se encuentra en el panel de control de Zoom. Seleccionaremos preguntas que serán respondidas en vivo por nuestros invitados y otras preguntas serán respondidas de manera escrita para que otros asistentes también puedan leerlas. De esta manera, si le respondemos una pregunta de manera escrita, su pregunta también será visible para los demás asistentes. Este webinar está siendo grabado y en 24 horas usted recibirá un enlace a esta grabación, así como nuestra encuesta sobre este evento. Por favor, complete la encuesta para compartir su experiencia y así ayudarnos a mejorar. Le pedimos que por favor silencie su micrófono cuando no esté hablando y por favor silencien sus teléfonos. Ahora, y con ustedes, la representante de nuestro patrocinador del taller, Nick Jaramillo, de Truist. Nick. Nick, ¿estás en mute?
No, ahora no. Bienvenidos a la novena Cumbre de Emprendedores de HUF. Mi nombre es Nicolás Jaramillo y me encuentro hoy aquí por parte de Truist. Nos sentimos honrados de tenerlos a todos ustedes hoy aquí, así como de patrocinar este taller, Programa de Protección del Pago del Salario, el PPP, y otros capitales circulantes. Truist representa la reciente fusión entre BB&T y SunTrust, organizaciones que cuentan con una historia combinada de más de 275 años. Juntos, ahora somos el sexto banco más grande de los Estados Unidos. Truist estuvo muy involucrado en el PPP, ayudando a más de 70,000 clientes y financiando casi 13,000 millones en préstamos. Somos un socio orgulloso de HUF y seguimos comprometidos con los clientes y las empresas de nuestra comunidad local. El propósito de la sesión de hoy es asegurarnos de que ustedes se informen, se conecten y se inspiren. Nuestras panelistas de hoy son Iván Buculani, vicepresidente y líder del equipo SBA de Amerant, y Fabiana Estrada, directora de préstamos de la región sureste de Acción East. Iván y Fabiana, es un placer tenerlas hoy aquí.
Muchas gracias. Gracias. Y gracias, Nick, por presentar a nuestras panelistas. Pasaremos inmediatamente a hablar con nuestras invitadas especiales a nuestra discusión. Buenos días, Fabiana y Ivonne. Para la pregunta del día de hoy, para empezar esta discusión, la primera pregunta es la siguiente. El programa de protección de pago de salario, o PPP, cerró a principios de este mes. Si yo no tuve la oportunidad de presentar una solicitud o si mi solicitud no fue aprobada, ¿qué alternativas tengo?
Gracias, Eduardo. Para empezar, si el PPP acabó agosto 8 de este mes, lo que está disponible en este momento es el idle loan. Es el préstamo que está dando el SBA directamente a los clientes que necesitan ayuda por tener pérdidas económicas por este periodo. Pueden aplicar directamente en el website, ese es sbadisaster.gov, y ahí tienen la aplicación, lo llenas electrónicamente. Tiene que tener todos los papeles de su empresa disponibles, los taxes, porque te va a preguntar sobre las ventas anuales, sobre el neto que están reportando, y depende de la información que ustedes tienen, el SBA te va a otorgar el préstamo. El préstamo del idle loan te lo están haciendo por 30 años a la tasa de 3.75. Puede ser que te piden una garantía personal, depende del monto del préstamo, o colateral adicional para el préstamo porque es un préstamo de largo plazo. También hay otras oportunidades que está dando el gobierno de Miami-Dade, que voy a dejar que Fabiana le explique un poco de esos diferentes programas que hay.
Gracias, Ivonne, y gracias, Eduardo, por la presentación. Es un programa que está disponible para empresarios que estén en Miami. Lamentablemente no llega hasta Broward, y se llama RISE, y está en miamidaderise.com, donde pueden ir y tratar o completar la información para comenzar la aplicación, donde se les va a pedir información financiera del negocio, se va a mirar el crédito. Todos los programas que están disponibles en este momento están observando el crédito personal, que es la garantía por la cual se va a otorgar un préstamo, y también el cash flow, que son los dos factores que seguramente vamos a hablar un poquito más en profundidad durante el transcurso de la charla, que son los dos factores más importantes que se está viendo, la capacidad de repago y cómo está el crédito, cómo hemos manejado las cuentas. Lo que puedo sugerirles es que consulten con los comisionados locales de cada área de ustedes en Broward o donde nos estén escuchando, para saber si hay algún programa o algún incentivo en los cuales ustedes puedan aplicar, ya sea que estén trabajando desde la casa o que tengan un negocio a la calle, un storefront. Siempre consultar con las ciudades locales.
Perfecto, Fabiana y Ivonne, muchas gracias. Y ahora le recuerdo a los participantes del evento de hoy que si tienen alguna pregunta para nuestras panelistas, por favor envíen las preguntas a través del Q&A en su control de Zoom. Ahora pasaremos a nuestro próximo punto de discusión. Es el siguiente. Recibí con éxito un préstamo de PPP. ¿Cuáles son las cosas claves que debo de hacer y tener en cuenta para garantizar que mi préstamo sea condonado o perdonado?
Eduardo, ok, déjame tomar esa contesta. Para poder tener el préstamo perdonado, tienes que utilizar primero el dinero para el propósito que fue pedido, que fue para pagar el sueldo de los empleados de ustedes. Por lo menos el 60% del préstamo tenía que haber usado para pagar salarios. Si menos del 60% fue usado para pagar salarios, no va a ser perdonado. El 40% del préstamo se puede usar para pagar renta, se puede usar para pagar interés sobre una hipoteca de negocio, se puede usar para pagar utilidades, que son el teléfono, agua, electricidad. ¿Ok? Pero la mayoría del préstamo es para payroll. Si lo usaron para otra cosa, no va a ser perdonado. Lo que tienen que empezar a tener son todos los documentos para probar que se usó para payroll. Por ejemplo, pueden ir a la payroll company que ustedes usan, que es ADP o cualquier otra compañía, y ellos van a dar un reporte de payroll que te va a decir cuántos empleados, manteniste los 10 empleados para decir si tuviste, que tuviste cuando empezó, que se pagó X número de dinero, más de 100,000 no se cuentan, es menos de 100,000 el salario anual. Tiene que tener documentados los taxes que se pagaron, si se usó para pagar utilidades, necesitamos tener las copias de los invoices, de las utilidades, con pruebas que se pagó, una copia de un cheque cancelado. Si fue renta, necesitamos copias ay, estoy traduciendo, el rental agreement, perdón. Me cuesta traducir algunas veces. El contrato de renta que tienes con el landlord, si eso lo pruebas con la copia del cheque que se pagó, es otra manera de soportar el uso del préstamo.
Como dijo Ivonne, lo importante es tener la documentación que avale cómo se utilizó el dinero del PPP, que eso va a ser lo más importante de determinar si es un préstamo que va a ser perdonable o no. Entonces, en función de la conversación que pueda tener el aplicante, el dueño de negocio, con su organización, con su institución financiera, porque lo que es fundamental y nos gustaría un poco que se lleven los empresarios como consejo, sugerencia, es decir, que trabajen siempre junto con el banco que tiene su cuenta de cheque, su cuenta de negocios, su cuenta personal. Ellos son los que van a dar las líneas generales. No van a ir a su casa a buscar la documentación, pero pueden explicarles cuáles son los requisitos, porque hay dos tipos de aplicación. Está la aplicación que es más fácil, la Easy, que se llama de esta manera porque tiene solamente 2 páginas, o la que es más extensa, que tiene 11 páginas, que tal vez Ivonne puede explicar un poquito más acerca de las condiciones de ambas. Pero todo va a estar relacionado en referencia a lo que yo pueda demostrar, cómo gasté y cómo usé el dinero dentro de lo que es el PPP para ser perdonable.
Correcto. Para continuar con lo dijo Fabi, en la forma EC es el easy, como se dice, lo pueden usar las empresas que no reducieron los salarios de los empleados, que no reducieron los números de empleados de full time, que se llama FTE. Si no tuvieron esos cambios, se pueden usar el Easy Form. Si hubiesen tenido reducción de salario, reducción de números de empleados, la forma más grande es el 3508, que es regular, que te piden más información. Y todo eso, si necesitan más información, lo pueden conseguir en la página del website del SBA, del PPP, que están todas las aplicaciones, están todas las instrucciones de las aplicaciones también, junto con preguntas que son las preguntas frecuentes que se hacen, las tienen todas contestadas del SBA ahí para el empresario.
Sí, el SBA también tiene videos en español, en donde explica cómo es el proceso, cuál es la zona de seguridad, que hay 4 lugares donde el empresario puede estar seguro para estar en la línea de conseguir el préstamo perdonable. Es decir, hay información directamente de la fuente del SBA. Vayan a YouTube, he visto que hay videos muy explicativos, y si no, también tienen la asistencia de los 2 organizaciones muy importantes que son como brazos del SBA técnicos, que sería SCORE y SBDC. ¿Ok?
Muchas gracias. Sí, bastantes recursos que hay en las páginas de SBA y demás que podemos tomar ventaja. Ahora haremos una pequeña pausa para responder preguntas realizadas por los participantes. Recuerden que pueden hacer sus preguntas por medio del Q&A de su control de Zoom y le podemos responder las preguntas verbalmente con nuestros participantes o escritas por medio del Q&A. Por ende, la primera pregunta es la siguiente de los participantes. Mi empresa solicitó el PPP o el PPP y el IDLE o el IDLE por sus siglas en español. ¿Puedo solicitar el programa RISE de Miami-Dade?
Sí, definitivamente que sí. Recordemos que el IDLE, que es el préstamo del desastre, como se conoce en español, es una cantidad de dinero que se va a dar en función de los costos operativos de la empresa. Lo que va a hacer RISE, a diferencia del IDLE, va a tomar lo que es la cantidad de dinero que paga el empresario en la renta o la hipoteca del negocio, ya sea que trabaje desde la casa o trabaje en un local. Entonces, digamos, si yo pago $1.000 por mes por el local que tengo a la calle, va a multiplicarse por 6 y eso me va a dar la cantidad del préstamo. Va a ser un préstamo de $6.000 donde el interés va a ser muy bajo, 3.25, que es el prime. No voy a tener que hacer pagos por los 3 primeros meses, cosa que es bastante flexible, porque con la situación que tenemos, que abrimos, que cerramos, que vamos a mitad, es muy difícil también predecir cómo va a estar el cash flow del negocio, pero al menos estamos dando la alternativa de que puedan acomodar un pago y que saber que en diciembre, donde empieza la temporada alta, las fiestas y demás, todos tenemos la confianza que la economía va a estar un poquito más fuerte y se va a poder hacer el pago. El préstamo del disaster, el IDLE del SBA, va a dar un periodo de no pago de 1 año. Entonces, lo que se está viendo es que todos los programas que están afuera tratando de ser de asistencia a los empresarios se están dando como un periodo de gracia, intereses bajos. Lo que también es bueno mencionar es que los empresarios traten de recurrir a estas herramientas y que no caigan en sistemas predatorios de préstamo, donde los intereses son muy altos, donde hay pagos diarios y donde lamentablemente todos esos tipos de préstamos que son tan rápidos y supuestamente sencillos, no colaboran a formar crédito del negocio ni crédito personal, y es un dinero que se paga muy caro por el préstamo que se ha tomado.
Eso es correcto, Fabi.
Ok, muchas gracias. Hay que tener bastante cuidado con todos estos préstamos y tomar decisiones sabias. Muy importante. La otra pregunta que está de nuestros participantes es la siguiente. ¿Existen préstamos similares para empresas más nuevas, empresas establecidas recientemente? ¿Existen algunos préstamos para estas empresas que son muy nuevas?
Bueno, en
En este
realidad no
momento va
mucho.
a ser muy difícil, sí.
Exacto.
Va a ser muy difícil en este momento. El SBA es famoso de ayudar a esos clientes de tener préstamos cuando son empezando, pero como la situación económica está ahora, por toda la incertidumbre por el COVID, es muy difícil otorgar un préstamo así en este momento.
Exactamente, tiene toda la razón Ivonne. El SBA tiene programas, por ejemplo, como el Community Advantage, que es un producto que lo tiene Acción, pero en este momento Acción lo tiene en suspenso. No está haciendo este préstamo para startup, porque es una economía. Si bien hay industrias que les está yendo muy bien, porque como decimos siempre, en toda ocasión hay oportunidades, y las oportunidades es bueno también tratar de sacar ventaja, aprovechar, ver como un punto de crecimiento. Vemos que muchos negocios que estaban operando con un modelo ahora están tratando de operar por internet, remotely, hay sistemas de delivery, es decir, vemos que los empresarios están tomando la iniciativa de reestructurarse, de ofrecer otro tipo de servicio al cliente, al consumidor, y todo eso por ahí los hace crecer y quieren pedir un préstamo, pero lamentablemente no está la condición económica. Cuando nosotros hablamos de créditos, siempre se evalúa el colateral, el crédito, el cash flow y una parte que se llama condición. ¿Cuál es la condición del mercado? ¿Cuál es la condición para que este tipo de producto continúe en alza o no? Todo el mundo está tratando de cuidar al empresario. Nadie va a querer dar un préstamo para que en 2 meses falle y reportarlo al buró de crédito. Entonces tengamos un poco de paciencia y tratemos de utilizar los préstamos de emergencia que hay en la actualidad.
Sí, es correcto, porque muchas veces, por ejemplo, para una pequeña empresa, los bancos piden una proyección, pero en este momento es difícil que esa proyección sea la realidad, porque no se sabe, hay mucha incertidumbre en este momento. Entonces, tenemos que estar con precaution para esos préstamos ahora. Precaución, perdón.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. Ahora, la siguiente pregunta de nuestros participantes es la siguiente. ¿Cómo puedo yo solicitar el préstamo por desastre por daños económicos y cuáles son los montos mínimos y máximos de ese préstamo?
Para poder aplicar por ese tipo de préstamo, que es el EIDL loan, tienen que entrar a la página webpage del SBA, que es sbadisaster.gov. Ahí mismo se aplica. Ahí no pones un monto de un préstamo. El SBA va a evaluar en la información del préstamo basada en la información que tú vas a poner. Tiene que ser la realidad, porque ellos van a chequear tus taxes. Ellos tienen acceso a lo que tú estás peleando con el IRS. Entonces, te va a pedir cuántos son las ventas, cuánto es el neto de ustedes, cuántos son los gastos operacionales. Entonces, basado en esa información, ellos hacen una determinación del préstamo. No es que tú pones un monto. ¿Ok?
Exacto.
Así como se están evaluando.
Es verdad lo que dice Ivonne en el sentido que nosotros a veces tenemos preguntas de empresarios que dicen, bueno, yo necesitaría idealmente $50.000, pero les preguntamos,
Sí.
¿cuánto es lo que ustedes facturan anualmente? Y lo que hacemos es 30.000. Entonces hay una falta de correlación entre la cantidad del préstamo que realmente necesitan. No queremos decir que no necesiten 50.000 tal vez para llevar el negocio al próximo nivel, pero todo indica, y más con esta situación de pandemia, que siempre hay que ir paso a paso, como baby steps que se le dice, no se puede enseguida, inmediatamente, cuando mi negocio está empezando, conseguir un préstamo de 50.000 o de 1.000.000. Tenemos que adaptarnos al crecimiento que va dando paulatinamente el empresario y el negocio. Nadie quiere poner en una situación, lo dije anteriormente y lo vuelvo a repetir, de default del empresario, es decir, que no pueda pagar, porque nosotros al revés, todas las instituciones bancarias quieren que ustedes progresen y que salgan satisfactoriamente si les dan un préstamo. No les van a dar un préstamo para fallar y quedarse con el colateral. Al contrario, quiere que ustedes paguen y que crezcan y después de tener un préstamo de negocio tengan una línea de crédito y después puedan comprar el local comercial. Es un crecimiento gradual el que siempre se está estimulando y lo vemos hoy en día, que es lo que está pasando con esta situación donde todo Estados Unidos, el mundo está parado.
Sí, también tienen que coger en conciencia que si ustedes en la empresa están llenando los taxes anualmente y están declarando una pérdida, no piensen que el gobierno te va a ayudar en ese momento. Ustedes tienen que tener que enseñar ganancias. Si tienen ganancias, hay capacidades de pago. No van a dar un préstamo si tienen algo negativo porque no, ¿cómo se va a pagar?
Claro.
Entonces tienen que tomar eso en cuenta.
Claro que sí, tiene que... Entonces está relacionado el cash flow, los ingresos tienen que ser positivos y relacionados al préstamo. No pueden pedir un préstamo
Correcto.
totalmente diferente a los ingresos de la compañía.
Lo que nosotros
Por
siempre
ejemplo,
decimos...
cuando...
No, continúa, Ivonne. Sí, dale, y después yo lo agrego.
No, yo que iba a comentar, por ejemplo, cuando fue el PPP, mucha gente que eran sole proprietors, que aplicaban con un Schedule C, mandaban los préstamos porque pensaban que con el 1099 que enseñaba un ingreso se iba a dar el préstamo. Y no, el PPP fue hecho para el Schedule C si estaban declarando una ganancia. Si tenías una pérdida en el Schedule C, no estaban dando préstamos. Entonces,
Exacto.
siempre yo sé que todo el mundo quiere ahorrarse pagar los taxes. Todo el mundo tiene que tener un tax liability poquitico, pero no quieren pagar, lo entiendo. Pero para poder tener un préstamo tienes que enseñar ganancias. Y tienes que pagar taxes, como todo el mundo.
A eso iba a ir mi comentario, que efectivamente está bien. Hay veces que el empresario decide no pagar impuestos, es una decisión muy impersonal y pone la empresa con pérdidas. Nosotros podemos deducir como empresarios un montón de cosas que a veces están bien deducirlas y a veces están en un área gris, pero es cuestión de relación del empresario con el contable, a ver qué es lo que sugiere, que si se puede, lo que sea. Por ejemplo, nunca se pueden deducir los intereses de las tarjetas personales que uso para financiar mi negocio. Deberíamos hablar con mi banco y aplicar para una tarjeta de negocio. Eso sería lo ideal en un mundo perfecto. Pero lo que estamos enunciando es que si nosotros vemos que nuestros taxes del 18 dieron una pérdida y los del 19 dieron una pérdida, los del 20 seguramente van a dar pérdida por todo lo que está pasando, pero tenemos que entender cómo nos van a ver del otro lado, que no voy a poder comprar el local comercial si estoy dando una pérdida, que no voy a poder pedir comprar mi primary residence, mi casa, que no voy a poder pedir el préstamo de negocio. Todo va a estar relacionado con la función también de lo que el empresario quiere para su negocio el año próximo. Hay que programarse. Por ahí es un año de vacas flacas y hay que declarar pérdida. Pero si es un año que me fue bien, necesito, aunque más no sea terminar even o dar una ganancia, porque si no yo mismo estoy diciendo, no me presten, no tengo dinero para repagarles. Ese es el mensaje que ustedes están dando.
Y correcto, y no importa el colateral que vas a ofrecerle al banco, no importa tu crédito personal que le vas a ofrecer al banco, si la compañía tiene pérdida, no hay préstamo.
Ok. Le quiero dar las gracias a los participantes por sus preguntas, muy buenas preguntas. Ahora pasaremos a nuestro próximo punto de discusión del día, el cual es el siguiente. ¿Cómo están haciendo las empresas con las que ustedes trabajan para ajustar las proyecciones financieras durante este tiempo de incertidumbre?
Es un tema bien difícil en este momento. Para poder hacer las proyecciones de ustedes, tienen que de verdad pensar en lo que es el futuro, y en este momento es bien difícil proyectar el futuro porque no se sabe. Las compañías que están haciendo bien son las compañías que están vendiendo productos de antibacterial, productos de limpieza. Las compañías que están vendiendo computadoras están haciendo excelente porque todo el mundo ahora necesita una computadora en la casa. Entonces, ustedes tienen que sentarse con un contador, ustedes tienen que irse con, por ejemplo, ayudancia de HUF, ayudancia de los SBDCs, que son, no sé cómo traducirlo bien en español, pero son las entidades que están en las universidades que ayudan a las pequeñas empresas. Está SCORE, que es una agencia del SBA que ayuda a los clientes a tener sus proyecciones. Hay muchas otras empresas. Fabi puede contarte de algunos más, por Acción también puede ser, los CDFIs.
Sí, exactamente. Las organizaciones comunitarias lo que nosotros estamos haciendo, porque bueno, la diferencia, ustedes se preguntarán, ¿cuál es la diferencia entre Amerant y Acción? Amerant, por supuesto que es una organización financiera que ofrece otros productos que Acción jamás va a poder ofrecer. Por ejemplo, una cuenta de cheques. Lo que hace Acción es tratar de cubrir un gap, se dice, una situación donde el cliente todavía no está en condiciones de ir a un banco. Entonces, un CDFI como nosotros, como lo puede ser Acción, lo que da es un pequeño préstamo, una cantidad limitada, y eventualmente el goal, el objetivo de Acción es que ustedes como empresarios pasen a ser un candidato para un banco. Ese es el ideal para todos. ¿Por qué? Porque el banco va a ofrecerles el mejor interés, el banco les va a ofrecer la tarjeta de crédito, el banco les va a ofrecer el merchant. Son servicios que un CDFI jamás le va a poder ofrecer. Entonces, la idea para ustedes es empezar poco a poco, ver las industrias, como dijo Ivonne. Es muy importante también que como todos estamos trabajando desde la casa, se ha visto un incremento también en las industrias de construcción, en las industrias que arreglan o modifican, por ejemplo, una habitación, los contratistas independientes que pueden levantar una pared y hacer una especie de loft para que uno pueda trabajar desde la casa. Es decir, hay muchas industrias que tienen una buena proyección, pero ¿qué pasa si se vuelve a cerrar la economía? Por más que sea una industria como las computadoras, que bueno, una computadora puede llegar por delivery, pero si estoy haciendo el loft para tener mi lugar en donde trabajar, tal vez eso se vuelve a cortar. Entonces es muy difícil basar un loan en parte de un plan de negocios o una proyección. Es bastante complicado y eso es bueno que ustedes como empresarios lo comprendan, que están en una situación en donde todo se va a mirar el doble, con más detenimiento, para estar seguros de que no estamos cometiendo un error y poniéndolos en una situación complicada al momento del repago.
Correcto. En este momento lo que tienen que hacer es proteger su crédito personal, proteger el cash flow de la compañía y poco a poco invertir en lo que puedan invertir.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. De nuevo, les recuerdo a nuestros participantes, si tienen alguna pregunta con nuestras expertas del tema, por favor usen el Q&A feature en su control de Zoom. Ahora, Fabiana e Ivonne, la siguiente pregunta es la siguiente. Como propietario de un negocio, ¿cómo me aseguro de tener una relación fuerte y completa con una institución financiera? ¿Qué cosas debo de considerar para tener una relación financiera con una institución financiera?
Nosotros siempre decimos lo mismo porque somos los que estamos en el primer escalón, por así decirlo. Y nos ha pasado, por ejemplo, con el proceso del PPP. Lo primero que le decíamos al empresario es: consultaron con su banco, vieron que el banco tiene el programa del PPP, porque todos han estado haciendo el PPP. ¿Qué sucedió? Muchos bancos no pudieron hacer el PPP porque pedían que tuvieran una cuenta, una tarjeta de crédito en adición a la cuenta por ahí de negocio, o que tuvieran la cuenta de negocio y la personal en esa institución. Entonces, la lección que nos deja esta situación con el COVID es que tenemos que conocer, no es que nosotros ponemos el dinero y ya está, tenemos que conocer los servicios que tiene el banco, si corresponde al tipo de actividad que yo estoy haciendo, qué tal si quiero hacer un depósito después de hora, qué pasa, puedo levantar el teléfono y hablar con mi account executive, con mi manager de mi cuenta para saber si este cheque tiene fondos o si se puede hacer el pre-screen de un cheque. Es decir, es importantísimo la relación que uno pueda tener como todo es networking. Si yo no conozco y solamente lo que hice fue abrir la cuenta de banco y no aparecí nunca más y lo único que tengo es la cuenta de negocio, ¿cómo el banco va a conocer mi empresa, mi interés, si necesito un merchant account, si puede ofrecerme otro tipo de servicios? ¿Es importante una relación con el banco? Sí, definitivamente que lo es.
Sí, como dijo Fabi, yo como banquera, yo quiero tener la relación entera del cliente. Amaranth, junto como Truist, igual, van a ver si tú tienes la cuenta personal, la cuenta de tu empresa, tu check card, tu cuenta de préstamos, de tu casa, hipotecaria. Queremos tenerlo todo porque así te vamos a conocer y te vamos a servir todos los aspectos que tú necesitas. Si tienes una cuenta conmigo, una cuenta con Truist, u otra cuenta por allá, tienes cuentas con todo el mundo, ¿con quién tú banqueas? Entonces el banco, si no eres fiel con el banco puede ser que no sea fiel contigo, totalmente porque no tiene su relación. Tienes que trust en el banco que tú tienes. Y estamos aquí para servir todo lo que tiene el banco, de wealth management, junto a préstamos del carro, todito. Entonces trata de tener un banco y tener una relación completa con ese banco. Y así va a ser mucho mejor.
Perfecto. So, la lección es tratar de desarrollar esa relación con el banco. Y es muy importante. Ahora tomaremos una pausa para, de nuevo, responder las preguntas de nuestros participantes del día de hoy. Entonces, recuerden que pueden hacer las preguntas por medio del Q&A en su panel de control de Zoom. La siguiente pregunta de nuestros participantes es la siguiente. ¿Conoce alguna fuente de financiamiento, así sean préstamos o grants, que atiendan a emprendedores con discapacidades?
No, de que yo sepa, no.
Ok. Bueno, vamos a hacer la labor de buscar y vamos a agregar eso a los recursos de nuestro eSummit.org. La siguiente pregunta es, mi empresa obtuvo en español, EIDL, $1,000 por empleado, y también recibió el PPP. ¿Es posible perdonar el 100% del PPP?
No. Desafortunadamente, si ustedes recibieron el Idle Advance, que es los $1,000 hasta $10,000, dependiendo de los números de empleados, ese dinero se va a descontar lo que te va a perdonar el SBA. Por ejemplo, si tu préstamo del PPP fue por $50,000 y ustedes recibieron $10,000 del Idle Advance, y si usaron el PPP para que lo que tenían que usarlo, nada más que te van a perdonar $40,000 y vas a deber los $10,000. ¿Ok? Eso no es perdonado.
Okay. Muy bien. Ahora, la siguiente pregunta es, ¿qué puedo hacer para establecer crédito para mi negocio, además de usar mi crédito personal?
Mira, crédito para negocio en sí no es un crédito para el negocio. No es como una cuenta personal que ustedes tienen un credit score. Para ver un préstamo en un negocio se mira el flujo de caja de ese negocio. Junto con el crédito personal, se toman las dos partes en cuenta. Si la empresa no tiene flujo de caja y no tiene capacidades de pagar el préstamo, no puede otorgar un préstamo, aunque tenga el crédito personal excelente. Porque el banco no le va a dar un préstamo a nadie que no lo puede repagar. Aunque me dé, como habíamos hablado antes, aunque me des tu casa que no tiene ninguna deuda, igual, los bancos no son prestamistas de colateral y no son prestamistas de crédito personal. Eso es una tarjeta de crédito. Los bancos quieren una línea de crédito, capacidades de pago, quieren un préstamo de hipoteca, capacidades de pago. Entonces, tienes que mirar los estados financieros de la compañía bien, no reportar tantas pérdidas, reportar los gastos que son adecuados para tener un flujo de caja para poder repagar el préstamo. Y también tener liquidez la compañía, porque también están dos partes. Ahí está la parte de flujo de caja, pero si la compañía también está muy endeudada, por ejemplo, si los gerentes de la empresa quitan mucho de capital todos los años, en vez de pagarse un sueldo, le van a pagarse un distribution y van a drenar el capital de la compañía. Eso también tiene un double sword, como se dice, porque entonces la compañía no tiene liquidez, entonces un banco no te va a otorgar un préstamo por dos cosas, porque no tienes capacidades de pago y no tienes el apalancamiento que necesita la compañía para otorgar el préstamo. El apalancamiento es muy alto.
Claro, ok, entiendo. Muy buen punto ese, hay que tener eso en cuenta también. Ahora, hay otra pregunta de nuestros participantes. Dicen, somos una empresa solo con un año en Miami, David. ¿Hay algún préstamo para nosotros o préstamos por un business plan?
Mira, en este momento es muy difícil y Fabi me va a colaborar con eso, porque el SBA sí otorga préstamos para pequeñas empresas que son recientemente empezadas, basado en un business plan, basado en cash flow projections, en las proyecciones y todo. Pero como en este momento es difícil asumir que las proyecciones son verdaderas, va a ser muy difícil otorgar un préstamo. Hasta los microloans que hace Fabi, puede ser que sea muy difícil, ¿correcto, Fabi?
Sí, lo que podría hacerse es un préstamo muy pequeño, porque todavía tiene un año en operaciones, es decir, tal vez 12.000, no más de eso. Lo que sucede es que ahora Acción tiene una capacidad de préstamo limitada y el interés es un poco alto, al 13.99 al 15.99%, pero esta es alternativa. Si me gustaría tal vez que ver la situación particular de esta empresa, porque si tiene 2 años registrada, tal vez pueda ser el fondo RISE, no lo sé, porque a veces uno dice, bueno, yo tengo un año en operaciones, pero está tal vez registrada desde del 2018 y por ahí el 2018 hicieron taxes con una pérdida y por eso cuentan que tiene un año en operación, porque tal vez hicieron los últimos 3 meses o 4 meses, pero tal vez puede haber un poco de flexibilidad. Por eso un CDFI, cuando analiza los préstamos, tiene un poco de soltura en cómo analizar este tipo de situaciones. Pero en un mundo anterior a COVID, esta empresa hubiese podido calificar para un préstamo, inclusive con un interés más bajo, con el programa del SBA de microloans. Lamentablemente no tengo a nadie que recomendarle que haga SBA micro, porque todos estamos en la misma situación. Los fondos fueron agotados, entonces no tengo a nadie a dónde dirigir. Sí, de grants, vuelvo a recomendar que googleen el sitio de Hello Alice, así como suena, como Hola Alicia en español, que es un engine en donde uno puede buscar grants. Hasta el mes pasado estaba bastante activo. Tienen que ver que siga en actividad, a ver si ese mecanismo, ese engine, le puede dar o machear con algún tipo de grant. Y también lo que dije anteriormente, recurrir a los comisionados. Uno toma su zip code, lo googlea también y le va a dar quién es el comisionado del área donde el business está localizado. Y preguntar, ¿hay algún tipo de asistencia? Últimamente acá en Miami salieron asistencias de programa para artistas, para hotelería, es decir, hay algunas cositas que se están manejando y de a poco va a llegar también más ayuda, más asistencia. Por eso lo que les tratamos de lograr con este tipo de conversaciones, con este tipo de sincera conversación que tenemos con ustedes, que estén preparados porque más ayuda va a llegar. Pero se les van a pedir los créditos, los documentos, el cash flow, todo tiene que estar en su lugar.
Muchas gracias. Ahora vamos a pasar a nuestro próximo punto de discusión y es el siguiente. ¿Qué recomendaciones pueden dar en cuanto a la manera correcta de administrar cuentas de personales y comerciales? Pueden ser de depósito o crédito. ¿Qué recomendaciones pueden dar en cuanto a la manera correcta de administrar cuentas personales y comerciales?
Yo me imagino que se puede decir es de tener todo al día. Tener todos los invoices al día, tener tu QuickBooks todo al día, no esperar que pasen muchos meses. Es lo que yo puedo pensar.
Les voy a agregar algo que fue una situación un poco curiosa que ha pasado en varias oportunidades. Es importante tener la cuenta de banco personal y la cuenta de banco del negocio. Y en la cuenta de banco personal, hacer los gastos personales. Y en la cuenta de banco del negocio, hacer los gastos del negocio. Ejemplo, ha sucedido varias veces y lamentable ha sido motivo de declinación de préstamos, donde veíamos gastos excesivos en la cuenta de negocio, por ejemplo, en los Mikosuki, en los casinos. Está muy bien ir y tener diversión, ir a cualquier lugar, no hay ningún problema. Pero si eso me está poniendo la cuenta en negativo, ¿por qué ponerlo desde la cuenta del negocio? Hacerlo en la cuenta personal. Los bancos tienen diferentes alternativas donde les pueden ofrecer cuentas inclusive con poco monthly mantenimiento mensual, donde no es muy caro mantener una cuenta si mantienen ciertos niveles de depósitos. Entonces, con la cuenta personal, perfecto, me voy a los Mikosuki, voy a donde quiero y hago lo que tenga ganas. Pero en la cuenta de negocio trato de tener los gastos del negocio. Si tengo que invitar a algún cliente a almorzar y quiero pagar con mi tarjeta de débito de la cuenta del negocio, no hay problema. Cargo gasolina, no hay problema. Compro productos, no hay problema. Es decir, eso sería lo que uno típicamente tiene que ver y mantener la información en la cuenta de negocio. Y en la cuenta personal puedo hacer lo que tenga deseo, voluntad, mientras que no perjudique el tipo de flujo entre una y otra. Pero siempre es aconsejable, lo mismo que yo mencioné anteriormente, tener mi tarjeta de crédito de negocio y tener en lo posible una tarjeta, aunque sea empezar con una pequeña tarjeta asegurada, si es que puede hacerse. No sé si ustedes en Truist y en Ameran la tienen, pero era un producto que al principio existía, donde uno podía abrir una pequeña tarjeta con una cantidad de dinero, con un CD, y bueno, eso iba siendo el crédito eventualmente del negocio.
Eso es un poquito del pasado, Fabi,
Sí.
pero para también es el inverso de lo que dijo Fabi. Las cuentas personales no se deben usar para el negocio. Si un banco empieza a ver en tu cuenta personal que mandaste una transferencia por una empresa, que estás usando la cuenta personal para otras cosas que no son personales, el banco te la puede cerrar. Esas son cosas del BSA, del Bank Secrecy Act. Cuenta personal, cuenta compañía. Punto. No se deben mezclar los dos porque puede causar que te cierren la cuenta.
Perfecto. Actualmente acaban de responder una pregunta del público que justamente preguntó eso. Dice, ¿está bien mezclar mis fondos de PPP con otro efectivo que tenga en mi cuenta bancaria de negocios?
Eso no importa porque todo el dinero entra para tu misma cuenta. Tú puedes tener otra cuenta separada para el PPP para poder manejarlo mejor, para poder distinguir qué se usó cada dinero, pero lo puedes mezclar igual porque algunas empresas no quieren tener dos cuentas. Yo les recomendé a mis clientes que abrieran otra cuenta para poder manejarlo mejor, para poder buscar los cheques que usaron mejor, para tenerlos distintos, pero no era necesario.
Okay, muchas gracias. Ahora, de nuevo, muchas gracias y queremos darle las gracias a nuestro patrocinador del taller Truist. De nuevo, en esta ronda final recibiremos preguntas del público. Por favor, utilice la opción del Q&A en su dispositivo de Zoom para hacerle las preguntas a nuestras panelistas. Así que la siguiente pregunta de nuestros participantes para nuestros panelistas es el siguiente. Recibí fondos del PPP, pero no he podido abrir mi negocio debido a las medidas estatales y de la ciudad en la que vivo. ¿Cuáles son mis opciones?
Esta sería una situación en donde el negocio todavía no está en operaciones y digamos que por ahí sea un restaurante o no sé, algo que no tenía delivery e igualmente ha seguido pagando a los empleados, quiero entender eso. Entonces, si el préstamo se utilizó para lo que se pidió, la opción es pedir el perdón de ese préstamo. Ahora,
correcto.
No se me ocurre otro escenario, porque tal vez yo recibí el PPP, no lo pude, es decir, lo utilicé pagando a los empleados, entonces sería ideal empezar con el proceso de el perdón del préstamo.
Es correcto.
Ok. ¿Y qué sucede si no puedo volver a contratar a todos mis empleados por la naturaleza de mi negocio? ¿Todavía puedo recibir el perdón del PPP?
Siempre y cuando puedes enseñarle al banco que usted trató de conseguir esos empleados que vuelvan a trabajar con ustedes. Por ejemplo, me puedes mandar una carta, un offer letter, una carta que le estás ofreciendo el trabajo a ese empleado y el empleado dijo, no quiero volver a trabajar porque estoy mejor con mi unemployment, por ejemplo. Por esa razón, que se llama un safe harbor, el SBA lo está aplicando, pero tienes que enseñar pruebas que sí trataste de ofrecerle trabajo a esos clientes y te lo negaron. Si no trataste de conseguir otra vez, sí te lo van a quitar. Porque no estás abajo del safe harbor.
Claro, la idea también, está bien, uno quiere mantener a su gente, a la gente que conoce, a la que por ahí le dio entrenamiento y demás, pero lo que siempre se le dijo al empresario, como dijo Ivonne, hubo casos en donde tal vez gente dijo, no, a mí me conviene quedarme en mi casa porque estoy recibiendo unemployment, y de hecho ha sucedido. Es mejor ofrecer el trabajo a alguien, aunque más no sea no la misma cantidad de horas o el pago, pero al menos tener algo concreto de que yo estuve proactiva como empresario y que no es que me quedé, bueno, no aceptó, no hago nada. Mostrar, si yo puedo mostrar que hice lo que está a mi alcance también para volver a darle la oportunidad a mi empleado o a un nuevo empleado, porque por ahí puse el aviso en el periódico, no sé, cartelitos o lo que sea, y no me funcionó. Entonces eso me va a ubicar en los lugares de seguridad de poder pedir el perdón del loan. Lo más fácil va a ser si mantuve la cantidad de empleados y tenía W2, eso estoy seguro. Los que no volvieron y mandé las cartas y hice todo lo que estaba a mi alcance, también estoy seguro. Si utilicé los fondos para pagar a empleados y parte de los fondos en lo que el PPP autorizaba, también estoy en un lugar seguro. Donde empiezo a estar en lugares grises y tal vez no sea perdonable el PPP es si lo utilicé para pagar una tarjeta de crédito, por ejemplo, personal. Entonces ahí ya estoy en un área gris, que es muy probable que el loan no sea perdonable. Lo que me puede pasar es tal vez es que me quede el loan a un interés del 1% y en un término que, bueno, no sería lo ideal porque como hemos discutido con Ivonne y en general en el panel, es evitar también hacer trampa, como se dice a veces, echa la ley, echa la trampa. Lo que se está buscando es evitar el doble dipping, es decir, aplicar en un lado y tener por el otro lado. Hay que tener mucho cuidado en el sentido de lo que uno pide, que esté medianamente acreditado, porque si no nos podemos meter en un problema tal vez involuntariamente, porque me dijo mi primo, mi tío, el vecino, recurramos a las fuentes, al SBA, recurramos a SBDC, a SCORE, a Hispanic Unity con los seminarios que da, vayamos al banco y preguntemos. Siempre hay oportunidad para saber un poco más.
Gracias. Y una pregunta relacionada a lo que estábamos hablando, dice, ¿cuáles son mis opciones si no puedo pagar la parte no perdonada de mi préstamo después del vencimiento de los 2 o 5 años? ¿Puedo refinanciarlo?
Eso todo depende en el banco. Usualmente si no lo puedes pagar, el banco le va a pedir al SBA que los pague. Si eso pasa, no es algo bueno, porque ustedes le van a deber el dinero al SBA y puede ser que el SBA, cuando ustedes filen los taxes del año que viene y están con un tax refund que le van a dar, el SBA te lo puede quitar porque le debes ese dinero al SBA. El banco puede ser que te trabaje contigo porque ellos no quieren perder el dinero, pero no te lo van a refinanciar al 1%. Te lo van a refinanciar a una tasa mucho más alta.
Entendemos. ¿Y recomiendan ustedes servicios de restauración de crédito para las personas, para que las personas puedan aumentar sus puntajes de credit score, del crédito?
Están compañías como Credit Karma, no sé de muchas compañías besides Credit Karma que lo hace por un servicio gratis. Fabi, ¿tú conoces de otras compañías?
Lo que a mí siempre me gusta decir del crédito es que, bueno, es como un poco engorroso, pero son situaciones en donde el individuo puede tomar la iniciativa y no hay necesidad de pagarle a nadie, porque ¿cuál es la magia de una compañía que me va a reparar el crédito? Tal vez haga una carta de disputa. La carta de disputa la puedo hacer yo como empresario, como individuo, por supuesto. Ahora, si yo no tengo tiempo y le quiero pagar, tengo la libertad de hacerlo. Un checkmark para ustedes, háganlo. Pero el crédito, lo que tiene detrás es que hay que pagar, si hay información incorrecta hay que corregirla, y si hay deudas que vengo teniendo en atraso y que no puedo porque tal vez tengo que poner un plato de comida en la mesa y no tengo el dinero, entonces tal vez evaluar situaciones un poco más dramáticas. y pensar en el futuro, que sería una bancarrota, una consolidación de deudas también, que eso existe, no es lo ideal, porque a nadie le gusta decir, bueno, tomé todo este dinero, ahora no puedo pagar, que alguien me lo maneje, voy a tener un solo pago y listo. Después voy a querer salir a pedir prestado y nadie me va a prestar, porque estoy en un proceso de consolidar deudas, de poner un solo pago. ¿Son soluciones? Sí, son soluciones, pero tengo que pensar a largo plazo cómo me va a afectar. ¿Por qué? Porque el crédito siempre tiene la implicancia de una garantía personal y como empresarios tenemos que empezar en el futuro, qué es lo que va a pasar, en la oportunidad que se va a presentar en el futuro. Ahora, si como dije anteriormente, no puedo pagar nada y tengo que hacer una bancarrota, será necesario hablar con un abogado que me oriente para saber qué capítulo es, la que tengo que pagar una mensualidad o la que no tengo que pagar nada. Si es una bancarrota comercial, es decir, hablar con la gente que entienda mi situación y que me pueda dar una asistencia también, porque no es libremente decir, ah, bueno, no paga nada, hago bancarrota, consolido. Las consecuencias que después voy a tener para eso es bastante complicada. Y hay deudas, como por ejemplo las del SBA y las que tienen la garantía de gobierno federal, que no se pueden borrar. Por ejemplo, student loans. ¿Cuántas veces vemos nosotros en gente que tiene buenos modelos de negocio, buen cash flow, pero hay deudas con préstamos estudiantiles? Entonces, ellos mismos se cierran la puerta para poder aplicar a los préstamos del SBA, ya sea los 504, que son los comerciales, o los 7A, que son para financiamiento de capital de trabajo, maquinarias, etcétera. El SBA tiene unos programas que me gustaría que tal vez por ahí Ivonne explique un poquito más, que es la experta, y es un orgullo tener a alguien con el background de Ivonne contándonos acerca del SBA. Pero sería bueno que ustedes entiendan que hay bancos muy acreditados que tienen la posibilidad de ofrecer los SBA program, los préstamos del Small Business Administration. Entonces, tal vez Ivonne pueda explicar un poquito acerca de ellos.
Sí, hay préstamos que el SBA están dando. Hay cosas como se llaman el SBA Express, que son préstamos pequeñitos de, bueno, puede decir 25,000 hasta 350,000, que ahora por el CARES Act, ese préstamo se incrementó para un año. Es un préstamo que da una 50% garantía para el banco, pero igual tiene que tener flujo de caja y no tener esos reportes en el crédito como habló Fabi. Están el 7A, que el 7A se puede usar para comprar inventario, para financiar gastos operacionales, permanent working capital, como se dice, comprar equipo, comprar un galpón, comprar un negocio, más que nada, sí, hacer un partner buyout. Está el 504 loan, que es para comprar equipos más grandes, que es también para comprar una propiedad que vas a operar tu negocio, y esos préstamos se dan a largo plazo. El SBA está ahí para ayudar a la gente que no pueden obtener un préstamo. Por ejemplo, un banco regular te lo puede dar en 5 años, pero si viene el SBA te puede dar 10 años. Por ejemplo, te puede poner el préstamo más largo plazo, pero igual, siempre tienes que tener capacidad de pago. Solamente porque está la garantía del SBA, no es que automáticamente te van a dar el préstamo. También tienes que ser ciudadano o tienes que ser residente con un Green Card Holder para poder obtener esos tipos de préstamos. El SBA no ayuda a inversiones. O sea, por ejemplo, si tú te quieres comprar un edificio de multifamily, el SBA no te lo puede otorgar porque tienes que ser una empresa que opera y tiene sus propias ganancias, sus propias ventas, sus empleados y todo eso. No un passive business, como se llama. Pero hay bastantes programas ahora. El mismo 7A que había hablado, el máximo era 5 millones, pero por el CARES Act ese préstamo se incrementó hasta 10 millones hasta diciembre. Después de diciembre ya esos préstamos vuelven al monto que era máximo, que es 5 millones para el 7A, y el Express va a ser 350. Entonces, esta es la oportunidad de aplicar por ese tipo de ayuda. Y también, si ustedes aplican, yo sé que no hay mucho tiempo, pero si ustedes otorgan un préstamo en el SBA entre ahora y los finales de septiembre, está el SBA Debt Release, que el SBA te va a pagar 6 meses de ese préstamo. Ellos mismos te van a pagar el préstamo, entonces no tienes que hacer ningún pago por 6 meses, pero tienes que haber cerrado el préstamo antes de septiembre. Entonces hay muy poco tiempo, pues ya estamos a los finales de agosto.
Tampoco el día. Otra pregunta
Sí.
es, ¿a dónde más puedo ir si mi banco rechazó mi solicitud?
¿De cuál? ¿Del TPP?
Correcto.
Ningún otro banco, porque es la misma calificación por todos los bancos. Entonces, si un banco te rechazó, el otro te va a rechazar igual. Si un banco te dio un préstamo más pequeño y otro más grande, alguien hizo algo mal. Entonces, es la misma para todos, el mismo requerimiento para todos los bancos.
Nosotros
Yo
hablamos
encontré fraude en mi banco por eso igual. Yo en el banco mío encontré un fraude porque el cliente me vino 2 veces. Cada vez era más dinero. Entonces, la tercera vez me dijo, mira, X banco me consiguió más dinero. Y dije, no, ya eso es fraude y yo lo tuve que reportar. Porque otro banco no te puede dar más dinero que te puedo dar. Porque es el mismo requisito.
Claro, y lo que habíamos dicho anteriormente, que cuando empezó el PPP terminó, entonces ya ahora no se puede aplicar, terminó el 8 de agosto, como dijimos al principio, ya terminó, se cerró el programa, al menos ahora no hay nada que hacer para armar una nueva aplicación. Sabemos que mucha gente hizo los taxes en julio, entonces puede ser que se hayan quedado lamentablemente afuera, por eso se habló del disaster, del idle, que se puede aplicar a ese. Pero lo importante, y cuando hablamos de la relación, lo que se vio es que la gente en desesperación empezó a aplicar online, con el banco A, con el banco C, con el banco D, que no digo que no lo podían hacer, pueden hacerlo, pero en vez de acelerar el proceso, lo que quisieron fue alentar, es decir, hacerlo más lento, no sé si se dice alentar el proceso, hacerlo más slow, muy, muy lento. ¿Por qué? Porque ya el online lender con el cual uno no tiene ninguna relación había creado un número de aplicación y ya el SBA tenía esa información. Mientras que yo iba con mi banco y como por ahí tardó un poco más, porque era impresionante la cantidad de reclamos de PPP que había, al momento de crear la aplicación ya lo tenía otro. Entonces, ¿qué pasó? Terminó con el online lender, que después continuó tardando aún más. Hubo casos en donde el empresario le pidió al online lender que baje la aplicación al préstamo que uno hace en línea sin conocer, que a veces puede ser predatorio y a veces puede ser con buena intención, pero bueno, baja la aplicación y me he podido quedar con mi banco. Es decir, hubo esas situaciones. Siempre lo más conveniente es quedarse con el que me conozca, es decir, como toda naturaleza humana, nos está pasando esto que tenemos que estar encerrados, que no podemos salir, que vamos a hacer compras limitadamente. Si necesito una asistencia, ¿a quién se la pido? A mi vecino, el que está al lado, no se lo voy a pedir a otro que vive muy lejos de mi zip code. Lo mismo sucede con las organizaciones financieras.
Es correcto.
Gracias. Y por última pregunta, y yendo por esta misma línea, preguntan si tienen conocimiento de actos de fraude que debamos conocer o cosas relacionadas con fraude que debamos estar pendientes.
Si alguien te llama y que dice que te puede hacer tu aplicación por el IRO, ahí mismo. Porque tú mismo lo puedes hacer online. La gente te están cobrando un porcentaje. Tú no sabes lo que ellos te están poniendo en el website. Tú no sabes qué información te están poniendo por tu empresa. Tú solo conoces tu empresa. Ellos no lo conocen. Ellos van a poner qué número sea para darte el monto más grande que sea para poder ganar su porcentaje de ese préstamo que es ilegal. Y después tú eres el víctima, porque después el gobierno va a ir contra ti por fraude. Tú mismo conoces tu empresa, tú mismo aplicas, no necesitas ayuda de nadie para aplicar online. O le das dinero a nadie por esa aplicación online, porque ¿para qué? Tú lo puedes hacer tú mismo.
Sí, lo mismo con la gente que está tratando de hacer la aplicación, fueron declinados por el préstamo del desastre, del IDAL, y quieren una segunda revisión. Lo pueden hacer ustedes mismos, porque por ahí faltó información. Como dijo Ivonne antes, la información no estaba a mano, o la completaron rápida, o cometieron un error. Apelen ustedes mismos al SBA, porque nadie me va a conocer mejor el negocio que lo conozco yo, y nadie puede. Es decir, si me quieren cobrar sería hasta inhumano porque se están abusando de una situación de necesidad. No debería hacerse eso. Y hay organizaciones como se nombraron, SCORE, SBDC, no van a hacer la aplicación como tampoco me van a hacer nunca el plan de negocio ni las proyecciones. El que lo tiene que hacer es el dueño de empresa, pero me van a guiar en el proceso.
Bueno, con esto concluimos el taller del día de hoy. Quería darle de nuevo a ustedes las gracias. Y antes de terminar, quería saber si tienen algunas reflexiones finales o comentarios finales para nuestro público antes de cerrar.
Bueno, sí, siempre mantener los libros al día, tener la información todo al día, en caso que el banco te lo pueda pedir, documentar todo lo que está pasando, no sobregirarse mucho en las cuentas, estar claro lo que tengan, proteger su crédito personal. ¿Fabi, qué más?
Sí, son todas cosas que comentó Ivonne que son de sentido
Ujú.
común, no darle información a gente que desconozco y que por ahí son soliciting y hacen llamadas para conseguir mi social o mi información de impuestos. En realidad, tratar de seguir mantenerse activos en la comunidad con estos webinars, con otro tipo de información, recibir newsletters de, por ejemplo, Hispanic Unity o de mi propia organización financiera, de mi banco, que me va a comentar si hay algún producto que pueda adaptarse a mi necesidad, que estemos presentes que más asistencia se está trabajando para que llegue, pero todos me van a pedir lo típico, crédito, el cash flow, es decir, el flujo de caja, el carácter que tengo yo como empresario, el tiempo en negocio, es decir, son las cuestiones básicas, el ABC de ser un empresario, conocer mi negocio, saber lo que necesito, cómo voy a utilizar el dinero y también estar pendientes de cuál es la tendencia, cuál es la situación en nuestra economía, qué es lo que se va a necesitar más, replantear el modelo de negocio, necesito seguir trabajando en un local, puedo trabajar desde la casa, es decir, son todas preguntas que debemos hacernos y que hay mucha gente, organizaciones comunitarias que también nos pueden ayudar en encontrar las respuestas adecuadas.
Wow, ha sido un placer tenerlos ustedes aquí en este taller y hablar con dos personas con tanta sabiduría sobre el tema. So, de nuevo, le quería dar a ustedes dos las gracias, a nuestros participantes también las gracias por estar en esta webinar. Y ahora quería de nuevo darle el micrófono al señor Nick Jaramillo de Truist, nuestro patrocinador del taller.
Gracias a nuestras panelistas, Iván Bucanani y Fabiana Estrada, por su inspiradora presentación. Los invitamos a visitar nuestra sala de exposiciones virtual. Si se perdieron alguno de los talleres o eventos anteriores, pueden acceder a las grabaciones en la página de recursos de hufesummit.org. Gracias y tengan un buen día.